Chapter 1577. There was a sun and a moon in the sky, and they had met several times. On the ground, humans and gods traveled together in the yellow springs. In the world of heavens, waves shook the world, and swords shook the heavens. From night to morning, the battle had lasted for hundreds of rounds. The intense battle shook even time. Since ancient times, the Nether King, the number one person at the top of the heavens, was so strong that no words could describe it. But now, the legend of the sword from the human world could actually fight the demon god to a draw. The path of a king was lonely and emotionless. With a boom, the palm energy and sword fingers collided. Raging waves swept through the 9 heavens, and true essence shook the heavens. The demon god's body was red several times. It was the first time in countless years that his true body had been injured to such an extent. However, although his physical body was injured, his fighting spirit became more and more shocking. It was as bright as a black sun, and it made the world shake. Facing the number one person at the top of the heavens, the king who had turned into a sword also raised his fighting spirit to the limit. Sword light rose around him, and it was so dazzling. Strong, so strong that words couldn't describe it. It was the first time such a battle had happened since the immemorial War of Gods. Even the great Tao was about to be shattered. Awesome! The sword of defeat slashed a shocking sword wound on the Nether King's chest. The brilliance in his eyes was about to illuminate the world. The king's sword was limitless, and the demon god was limitless. At the top of the heavens, 49 bridges appeared, symbolizing the 49 rules derived from the great Tao. When martial arts reached the peak, it formed its own Tao. In front of the temple, the Nether King's figure slowly rose and stood on the great Tao bridge. The demon god who controlled a great Tao finally showed his true strength. On the great Tao bridge, endless power gathered, and the demon god's pressure also rose rapidly. Above the 9 heavens, the gods from the 8 heavens saw this scene, and their expressions turned serious. This swordsman in the human world could already force the number one martial god at the top of the heavens to such an extent? There were 50 great Taos, and the Nether King was one of them. As long as the world existed, the Nether King was invincible. Although the way of the sword was strong, it wasn't one of the 49 great Taos. It couldn't shake the Nether King's existence. As expected, the moment the Nether King called out his great Tao, the entire world changed color. The demonic Tao was capable of destroying the heavens and extinguishing the earth. The Nether King raised his hand, and the 12 wings of sin extended outwards. They were like a heavenly curtain that covered the 9 heavens' divine sons. God grant you death. The Nether King spoke. In the air, devil might blotted out the sky and covered the earth, boundless and boundless. It was like a vast ocean, capable of destroying everything. Below him, the king's body froze, and he was actually unable to move at all. Under the might of the great path, even the supreme way of the sword seemed so weak at this moment. With a life and death crisis looming over him, the azure and red dual swords in the king's hands began to tremble violently. In the blink of an eye, they were forcefully thrown out of his hands. Prince Yan's eyes trembled and he looked sad. In the void, green and red clashed, and the ear-piercing sound of swords rang through the demonic world. 2 dazzling sword rainbows rushed straight to the bridge of the great path and collided with it. The 2 swords protected their master, forcefully clashing against the great Tao. Immediately, green and red collapsed. Heaven and earth were instantly split into 2. Half was sealed in ice, and the other half was burned in flames. Beneath the Nether King, the bridge of the great Tao began to tremble under the impact of the twin swords. Prelude to the immortal sword, heavenly chapter. In that instant, the king broke free from the shackles of the demonic path. With a loud shout, the heaven seal appeared for the first time. All of a sudden, the heavenly symphony overture and 10,000 swords appeared. On the bridge of the great Tao, the Nether King sensed something. He stared at the 10,000 swords in the void in front of him. His eyes flashed with surprise. At the summit of the heavens, the heaven seal appeared for the first time. 10,000 swords floated up and down, forming a bridge. There were 50 great paths and 49 great paths. As for the incomplete Great Path, it was gradually taking shape. A heavenly pride of a generation. In the void, the deities saw this scene. Their eyes were filled with unconcealable shock. Is this swordsman of the mortal world going to turn his body into the Great Path? Ever since the creation of the world, the 49 great paths were born from the chaos. They lived as long as the heavens and earth. There had never been a human, devil, or immortal who could form a great path on their own. On the bridge of the great Tao, the Nether King was also watching this scene. His eyes were filled with anticipation. He had been lonely for too long. Swordsman of the mortal world, don't disappoint him. At the summit of the heavens, beside the 49 bridges of the great Tao, the 50th bridge appeared. It was formed by 10,000 swords. Even though it was not stable, it was beginning to take shape. All of a sudden, an earth-shattering divine might appeared around the king. His sword intent penetrated the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Even the mortal world was affected by it. In the mortal world, among the mountains and rivers, Ning Fan's body suddenly trembled. He looked at the sky with a serious expression. What happened to this familiar feeling? Not far away, Qin Ning and Tin also felt the terrifying sword pressure from the end of endless time and space. Their expressions changed. It's great Xia's King Yan. In the immortal domain, the celestial venerables of the mortal world looked at the sky and said in shock, "This ominous feeling is not good." Mu Qianshang suppressed the agitation of the snow sword. His eyes darkened and he said, "If Ji Ming doesn't come back soon, he might not be able to see that senior for the last time." Qin Ning and Yin haven't found him yet? Luo Xingchen at the side asked seriously. It's easy to find him. The key is how to awaken the memories of his previous life. In front, the Chongling female venerable said with a serious expression. Even though I don't know what happened to Ji Ming, he is indeed reincarnating again and again. Qin Ning. In the Emperor's Star, among the mountains and rivers, the Chongling female venerable's voice sounded. Has Ji Ming not awakened yet? No. Qin Ning shook her head and answered. Yin and I have been following him. If he awakens his memories, we will immediately bring him back. Quickly. The Chongling female venerable's voice echoed. I have an ominous feeling. Something may have happened to Yan Qinhuang. Understood. Qin Ning nodded. She looked at the man in front of her and her expression grew grave. She also felt the abnormality in the 9 heavens. She hoped there was still time. At least, he had to see that senior for the last time. At the side, clenched her hands. A hint of nervousness flashed through her beautiful eyes. Master and that senior's relationship was extraordinary. She hoped there was still time. At the peak of the heavens, the bridge of sword path appeared. The sword light around Yan Qinhuang grew brighter. The supreme sword essence surpassed the man-god boundary and approached the great Tao of chaos. The 49 great Tao bridges gave off a destructive presence. Among them, the demonic path represented by the Nether King was so powerful that even the heavens trembled. Even among the 49 great Tao, it was one of the best. The Nether King's strength could not be doubted. Just like the great Tao, its existence was the truth. Yet at this moment, the 50th great Tao of chaos that could shake the demonic path appeared in the world. The sword path. When the sword path appeared, it had the power to suppress everything. The great Tao that the world could not tolerate was strongly rejected by the other 49 great Tao. But the sword path had appeared. How could it submit? At the peak of the heavens, the king put his hands together. As he opened and closed, the 6th sword appeared. Chapter 1578. At the peak of the heavens, the sword Tao formed a bridge. This shocking scene was unique throughout the ages. A king looked down on the world, moving the world and yin and yang. His own strength filled in the incomplete grand Tao and forged the final bridge of chaos. Since the ancient times, there had never been such a shocking method before. 50 great Tao bridges appeared at the same time, covering the peak of the heavens. On the great Tao bridge that symbolized the demonic Tao, the Nether King stood in the air. The 12 sin wings behind him covered the sky, and his demonic might shook everyone's hearts. On the other side, On the 50th bridge that symbolized the Tao of the sword, kings walked side by side. Their sword intents reached the heavens, unmatched and stunning throughout the ages. Resisting the great Tao with one person's strength was something that had never been done before. Today, the king defied the heavens, displaying his most dazzling style. Ha! Pushing his sword intent to the limit, the king let out an earth-shattering roar. As he opened and closed his hands, the sixth king's sword appeared. The primal chaos imperial sword contained the essence of the great Tao to the extreme. The sword's body was shrouded in the aura of primal chaos. It had returned to its original state and was no longer something an ordinary sword could compare to. Swordsman of the mortal world, God praises you. On the demonic bridge, as the Deep King saw this, he was no longer stingy with his praise. After waiting for an eternity, he finally saw a true primal chaos expert. On the Sword Tao Bridge, after the king summoned the Chaos Imperial Sword, his divine soul began to burn intensely. Dazzling brilliance illuminated the peak of the heavens. The strongest sword had already surpassed everything. Even the Great Path could not suppress it. The 50 bridges of the Great Tao coexisted at the peak of the heavens. The king stood tall, and the sword was the Tao. Lightning of chaos. After waiting for a long time, when the king's aura was at its strongest, the Nether King raised his hand on the demonic path bridge. Immediately, the winds and clouds of the 9 heavens changed. Primal chaos appeared, and 10,000 bolts of lightning appeared. Primal chaos lightning appeared, the sound of thunder deafening, the sound of 1,000 birds shocking the world, descending from the sky. At the same time, the demonic god raised his other hand. With a loud boom, the primal chaos heavenly fire descended. Thunder and fire moved together, burning the 9 heavens. The entire peak of the heavens was shattered by this terrifying power, and cracks were everywhere. Above the 9 heavens, the deities could no longer remain calm when they saw this scene. They flipped their palms and stabilized the peak of the heavens that was about to collapse. On the 50th bridge of the Great Path, the king formed a sword with both hands, and the chaotic imperial sword spun rapidly. Streaks of dazzling sword light shot into the 9 heavens, and its power was raised to the limit. The most powerful demon and the most powerful sword faced off against each other on the bridge of the Great Tao. The might of the demon and the might of the sword shook heaven and earth. In the blink of an eye, they collided. It was an indescribable horror. The 2 destructive forces clashed, and the entire sky collapsed. The earth cracked, and the sky was split in half. In the battlefield, raging waves swept out, and the aftershock was vast and mighty, destroying everything as easily as dry weeds and rotten wood. Suddenly, among the 50 great bridges, a bridge of chaos with a relatively dim splendor could not withstand the impact of the Sword Tao and Devil Tao, and collapsed with a loud bang. An unexpected scene occurred. The bridge of primal chaos collapsed, and a great Tao law was destroyed. The balance that had existed since time immemorial was broken. Whether it was the mortal realm, the immortal realm, or the summit of the heavens, everything was affected. In the mortal world, the great river that was flowing east stopped. The next moment, it suddenly flowed in the opposite direction. The great Tao laws collapsed, and the entire world turned upside down. The flowers were no longer fragrant, the birds no longer chirped, the river flowed backwards, and the sun and moon moved in reverse. What happened? In the mortal realm, above the immortal realm, Luo Xingchen and the others were shocked when they felt the drastic changes in the world. In the dark abyss, the god of plagues, who was in seclusion devouring the darkness origin, opened his eyes. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. The great Tao was out of balance. Even the heavens were helping him. The god of plagues rose to his feet. His terrifying dark chi spread out, crazily devouring the negative energy in the 3 worlds. On the purple star, in front of the great river that was flowing backwards, Ning Fan stopped and frowned slightly. Not far away, Qing Ning and Yin Er exchanged glances. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. Even during the great tribulation of heaven and earth, such a strange thing had never happened in the mortal world. What exactly happened at the end of the faraway world? On the other side of the mountain, The lady in a light blue dress stared at the horizon with a strange expression. Are there other worlds in the sky? She really wanted to go and have a look. Her desire to seek the Tao was born. Moon's spirit walked out of the mountains and rivers, looking for her own Tao fate. Sister Qing Ning, look at Master. At the bank of the great river, Yin Er's expression suddenly changed and she exclaimed. When Qing Ning heard her, she immediately shifted her gaze. At the bank of the great river, Ning Fan's hair was rapidly turning white at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. Qing Ning's expression changed. What happened? Boom! At this moment, dark clouds rolled across the horizon and lightning fell from the sky. The immortal treading tribulation had arrived. Ning Fan had entered the third realm of the martial Tao. Half of his lifespan was gone and his hair instantly turned white. His great Tao is incomplete. Qing Ning regained her senses and guessed the source of the scene in front of her. Her expression turned serious. If this continues, if Ning Fan's cultivation base continues to break through, his lifespan might be exhausted before he returns to his peak. In the immortal domain, the last world of light in the mortal world, heaven and earth suddenly shook violently. In front of them, the qi of darkness lingered. The darkness that had been silent for a long time finally invaded again. At the moment when the great Tao collapsed, the god of plagues appeared. His aura force was not inferior to the Lord of Darkness in the past. The god of plagues displayed his unparalleled ability with a shocking palm strike. He wanted to destroy the last light in the mortal world. In front of the celestial venerables of the mortal world, the female venerables of Changling gathered all her primordial qi. The 9 underworlds heaven-devouring devil scripture absorbed all the devil primordial qi of the mortal world and borrowed the power of light in the immortal domain to resist the power of darkness. Boom, it was a shocking strike. Light and darkness clashed countless times. In the immortal domain, heaven and earth rumbled and trembled, neutralizing the corrosion of darkness. The power of the palm strike made the female venerables of Changling's lips turn red. Even with the power of the immortal domain, she was still at a disadvantage. Chaos rose in the mortal world again. In the immortal domain, the celestial venerables of the mortal world all came out of seclusion and activated their cultivation bases to resist the darkness together. In the starry sky, half of it was darkness and the other half was light. With the help of the last world of light that Ji Ming sacrificed his life to leave for the mortal world, the celestial venerables of the mortal world barely had the power to fight against the darkness. In front of the immortal domain, the god of plagues looked at the world of light in front of him. His eyes narrowed slightly. The power of this immortal domain was really shocking. It had almost grown into a great world of perfection. The god of plagues looked at the old world that was collapsing around him. Uneasiness rose in his heart for some reason. The old world was collapsing and a new great world was about to be formed. Could it be? The god of plagues' heart sank. He did not dare to delay any longer. He activated all his power of darkness, wanting to destroy the world of light in front of him at all costs. Fellow cultivators, help me on this journey. In the immortal domain, the female venerables of Changling opened her mouth and said sternly. In all parts of the immortal domain, the celestial venerables of the mortal world responded. They activated their cultivation bases and fully released their cultivation bases. In an instant, the world of the immortal domain shook with devil might. The female venerables of Changling raised her palms to the sky and absorbed thousands of streams. The 9 underworlds heaven-devouring devil scripture displayed its strongest power, devouring the divine essence released by the celestial venerables and turning them all into a shocking attack. Boom! Darkness and light collided. The two forces collided and the aftermath spread. The light of the entire Ziwei galaxy instantly disappeared as though an eternal night had descended. Open! In the immortal domain, the celestial venerables of the mortal world roared. They burned their cultivation and exploded with shocking power. In an instant, with the immortal domain as the center, light spread rapidly and illuminated the Ziwei galaxy once more. In front of the immortal domain, the god of plagues was attacked by the power of light. He grunted and the corners of his mouth were dyed red. At the same time, in the immortal domain, the celestial venerables of the mortal world had blood splattered from their mouths and were injured. On the Z-Way star, on an extremely declining celestial mountain where even the inheritance was about to be severed, Moon Spirit in a light blue dress walked over. She looked at the old celestial master on the mountain and asked, "May I ask, Celestial Master, if there are immortals in the sky? May I ask, Celestial Master, if there is a sky beyond the sky?" Chapter 1579. After darkness descended upon the mortal realm, countless inheritances were destroyed. On the Emperor Star, on the last celestial mountain, Moon Spirit arrived and inherited the old celestial teacher's legacy. Meanwhile, in front of a large river that was flowing in the opposite direction, which was 1,000 li away from the immortal mountain, Ning Fan temporarily stopped moving forward and began to concentrate on comprehending the sword. On the opposite side of the river, waves crashed against the shore. On the riverbank, an ordinary sword was hovering in the air. The sword's body was trembling, and the sound was like the raging waves. Ever since he stepped into the immortal realm, his cultivation base had improved by leaps and bounds. He had crossed the void realm and the corporeal realm, directly attaining the true realm. Inside the true realm, Ning Fan saw the true essence of the laws of heaven and earth. His eyes became clearer and clearer. However, during the process of comprehending the Tao, his lifespan was also rapidly disappearing. Even though his facial features did not change much due to the improvement of his cultivation base, the qi of time on his body had become clearer. Not far away, Qing Ning and Yin Er were staring at Ning Fan in front of them. Just like before, they were guarding him silently. During the years when the Great Tao collapsed, everything in the human world changed. Flowers bloomed in the cold winter, and birds cried out blood. In the beginning, people were not used to this abnormal change. Some people even took the opportunity to spread the theory of the end of the world, making people panic. However, the adaptability of humans was incomparable to any other race. In just over 10 years, the people in the human world were already used to this strange scene. In the 10 years of drastic changes in the human world, at the peak of the heavens, in a world where time and space were completely different, the battle between the demon god and the king had reached its final conclusion. The king's sword of primal chaos was invincible, and even the bridge of the great Tao could not withstand it. After crossing the ages, the king's sword finally came into contact with the body of the demon god. The king of hell's primal chaos imperial sword was 3 inches deep into his chest. Fresh blood flowed out and dyed the king of hell's sword red. When the king's sword entered his divine body was heavily injured and showed signs of instability. How can the body of a god be disrespected? The fiend god was enraged when his divine body was injured. He threw a punch at the king's chest. With a muffled groan, the king's figure flew out for tens of thousands of feet and crashed into the Sword Tao Bridge. The Sword Tao Bridge trembled. Sword light scattered in all directions, unable to endure this terrifying power. The 8 perils sword, heaven and earth in one sword. When his divine soul reached its limit, the king no longer hesitated. He used his ultimate move, sword moving spring and autumn. At the top of the heavens, sword chi shot into the 9 heavens, and yin and yang transformed into thousands of swords. The king unleashed all of his sword intent. Chaos, death, sand sword, and abyss condensed sword dissipated and entered the king's divine soul. The sword will sword endlessly, trying to suppress the great Tao of chaos. On the demonic bridge, the Nether King stared at the glaring Sword Tao radiance in front of him. His eyes of God flashed with a strange light. The long wait was worth it. In the divine sun in the sky, God saw the change in the Nether King's expression. That was not right. God, it's time for this bet to come to an end. On the demonic bridge, the Nether King calmly spoke. As soon as he finished speaking, the Nether King raised his hand. With the demonic god's body as the center, demonic might spread out rapidly. Boom! The demonic god raised his hand, and the most terrifying chaos demonic thunder descended from the sky. Black thunderbolts split the space and time, and descended from the immemorial era to the present world. Both inside and outside the battlefield, the deities and kings felt the horrifying power of the chaos demonic thunder, and their bodies trembled slightly. It was comparable to the power of the first big explosion after the creation of the world. The chaos demonic thunder came from the immemorial era and spanned countless years. Just the pressure alone was enough to cause the top of the heavens to begin to collapse. The most powerful demonic god in the heaven realm had the power to suppress the great Tao of the heavens. The other great Tao bridges, which were also the great Tao of chaos, were all overshadowed. The palm that could destroy heaven and earth had the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. On the Sword Tao bridge, after the four swords returned, the king's sword was also raised to the peak. He turned his body into a sword, and the sword light cut through the top of the heavens. The final result of the most powerful battle of the humans against the gods was about to be revealed. Boom! The rumbling shook the 9 heavens and 10 earths, shaking the eternal sky. Countless heavenly Tao laws collapsed rapidly, and the 49 great Tao bridges shook again. In the raging sandstorm, the demonic bridge collapsed together. The demonic god, who symbolized the top figure in the heavens since ancient times, had fallen. Similarly, 1,000 feet away, the Sword Tao bridge collapsed bit by bit. The king's divine soul was also dissipating at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the divine sun in the sky, the deities saw this scene and could not hide the shock in their eyes. The Nether King had fallen? This unbelievable ending was even more unbelievable than the collapse of heaven and earth. The heavenly realm's #1 martial god, who was eternal and indestructible since the creation of heaven and earth, was almost the symbol of immortality. He was invincible in heaven and earth, and he was absolutely undefeated. In the temple behind, Lofei saw this scene, and her expression was also shocked. As the daughter of the Eternal Night clan, she knew the power of the Nether King better than anyone else. However, the scene in front of her was so real that she had to believe it. On the collapsed demonic bridge, black feathers fluttered around the Nether King's body. His aura was bright and dim, sometimes black and sometimes white. The god of destruction and creation was about to return to heaven and earth. Less than 1,000 feet away, the legendary swordsman of the mortal world and the heavenly realm's #1 demonic god, 2 absolute powerhouses who had stunned the ages, were about to fall. However, both of their eyes were abnormally calm. God, this round you have won. The Nether King glanced at the deities in the sky, and then shifted his gaze to the swordsman in front of him. He said calmly, "Human, you have amazed me." In the void, the divine sun descended from the sky. Looking at the heavenly realm's #1 martial god who was about to disappear, the deity said, "Nether King, your failure is only because you are too arrogant. There is always a winner and a loser in a gamble. However, I believe that this will be the last time." As he spoke, the devil chi around the Nether King quickly dissipated. Darkness fell from the sky and blended into the void, disappearing completely. On the Sword Tao bridge, the king turned around and looked at the mortal world. His eyes flashed with a hint of regret. Unfortunately, it was too late to go back. "Swordsman of the mortal world, do you have any unfulfilled wishes?" In the divine sun, the deity revealed a smile and asked. Prince Yen retracted his gaze and looked at the deity of the 8th heaven in front of him. Then he said calmly, As soon as his voice fell, the king's divine soul completely dissipated. His soul returned to heaven and earth. In the divine sun, the deity looked at the 2 great Taos that disappeared between heaven and earth. Without saying a word, his figure turned illusory and returned to the 8th heaven. Such an ending could not be any better. Sure enough, humans did not disappoint the deity. In the mortal world, Ning Fan broke through to the 4th realm in the blink of an eye. Almost at the same time, in the dilapidated immortal mountain, Yuling, who had inherited the legacy of the old heavenly master, used the reincarnation of sun and moon to break through to the sovereign realm before Ning Fan. On the immortal mountain, Yuling, who had already touched the barrier of the 5th realm, looked at the starry sky with a yearning expression. Is there really a sky in the sky? Was the shocking change 40 years ago caused by the immortals? In the immortal domain, 20 years after the Nether King's death, Nu Chang stepped into the monarch realm and became the first person in the mortal world. The Devil Dao Bridge collapsed and the souls of the devil gods returned to heaven and earth. Devil cultivators in the mortal world sprung up like bamboo shoots after a spring rain, vaguely showing signs of becoming the #1 Dao in the world. The only thing that could compete with the Devil Dao was the Sword Dao. The fall of the legendary swordsman of the mortal world actually made the rise of the Sword Dao. The mortal world entered a new era. Swordsmen in white robes could be seen everywhere riding their swords. In the Z-Way galaxy, black chi flowed and covered the sky. At the same time that the world of light changed, the world of darkness also underwent a great change. The Great Tao was incomplete and the power of darkness increased rapidly, becoming the last law that could possibly fill the gap in the Great Tao. There's only one last step left. The god of plagues looked at the last light in the mortal world. The greed in his eyes could not be concealed. Chapter 1580. At the peak of the heavens, the demonic path collapsed and the sword path perished. In a great battle that shocked the ancient and modern times, the #1 martial god of the heaven realm and the legendary swordsman of the mortal world both fell. This was an outcome that even the gods had not foreseen. No one could believe that the undefeated underworld king had died in battle. Divine Temple. After the Deep King died, the enchantment vanished. Madame Luo stepped out, looking at the vast and boundless 7-layered heavens in front of her, a strange light on her face. Now that the Nether King was dead, the entire world would descend into chaos. During her time in the Divine Hall, she could clearly feel the power of the many gods and demons in the 7 heavens realm. Previously, the King of Hell was intimidating, and all the gods submitted to him. Now that the King of Hell had fallen, how could these powerful gods and demons know their place? She and Z had to make plans early. Inside the shrine, Xia Zi, who was dressed in black, had been in a deep slumber for many years. In the past, when he had passed away, he had received the help of the Netherworld King to preserve his life. However, he had yet to wake up. Madame Luofei turned around and returned to the temple. As she looked at the unconscious Xia Zi, her eyes filled with tenderness. No matter what, she had to protect him. At the same time, in the mortal realm, by the bank of the great river that flowed in reverse, ordinary swords floated up and down. After 100 generations of reincarnation, only the sword would follow. In the blink of an eye, another 50 years passed. Ning Fan's cultivation base improved further and he officially stepped into the heavenly Tao realm. Her long white hair was so dazzling to the eyes. After the change of heaven and earth, Ning Fan's lifespan was being consumed at an unusually high rate. Even though his cultivation base was rising day by day, it was still difficult for him to replenish the loss of his lifespan. 1,000 li away, on top of an immortal mountain, Yuling was concentrating on her cultivation. Her cultivation base improved by leaps and bounds. Vaguely, her cultivation base was a notch higher than Ning Fan's. These two are truly perverted. Beside the river, muttered softly. He had missed the best age for cultivation, yet his cultivation speed was still so shocking. It was truly abnormal. At the side, Qin Ning looked at the white-haired young man with a worried expression. His lifespan was being consumed too quickly. If there came a day when the progress of his cultivation level stopped, the consequences would be unimaginable. Boom. At this moment, 1,000 miles away, thunder rumbled and heavenly tribulation descended from the sky. Another breakthrough. Jumped up and exclaimed. At the riverside, Ning Fan, who sensed Yuling's breakthrough, opened his eyes. His sword intent soared into the sky. Boom. In an instant, thunder and lightning appeared in the sky at the same time, resonating with each other. The two of them broke through again one after another. Dark clouds covered the sky and covered the sun. The scene was exceptionally spectacular. Under the lightning, the two of them faced their tribulations at the same time. Their power was earth-shaking. At the bank of the great river, Ning Fan held his sword and slashed open the tribulation cloud. After cultivating for 100 years, his cultivation had already attained the Tao reasoning realm, and his shocking advancement couldn't be described with the word genius. The memory fragments that were engraved in the depths of his divine soul began to recall. Under the heavenly tribulation, he seemed to have vaguely seen something. Above the starry sky, celestial lords stood in the air, numbering in the thousands. In the middle, black air currents surged, and the god of plagues stood proudly. The celestial venerables of the human realm worked together to trap the god of plagues. At the front, the Changling female supreme pushed her cultivation to the limit. The 9 hells heaven-devouring demon scriptures swallowed the aura of the 1,000 venerables and suppressed the source of the darkness. After fighting for an unknown number of days, the celestial venerables of the mortal realm had consumed a lot of energy. Even with the support of the light power of the immortal realm, they were gradually losing strength. The power of darkness was no longer what it used to be. The god of plagues' cultivation base was rising day by day, and he was not far from the 6th realm. The Genesis realm was a completely new and untouchable realm. None of the ancient sovereigns could reach it. In the starry sky, the battle was getting more and more intense. The female venerables of Changling went close to the source of the darkness. In the distance, Luo Xingchen held his divine bow and aimed at the god of plagues' vital parts. Not far away, Mu Qianshang raised his hand to wipe off the blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked at the source of the darkness in front of him with a solemn expression. What a monster! I wonder how Zhi Ming managed to defeat the Lord of Darkness alone in the past. Undying and indestructible, unshakably powerful. If it wasn't for the fact that they outnumbered him, there would be no need to fight this battle. In the center of the battle, the god of plagues' gaze swept across the celestial venerables of the mortal realm in the starry sky and frowned slightly. They were just mere ants, but they had actually blocked him for so many days. The moment the god of plagues was distracted, a slender hand came at him. The devil chi that surrounded it was unusually strong, like a raging wave. The god of plagues came back to his senses and blocked the female venerables of Changling with his palm. In an instant, a green arrow light pierced through the sky from afar. The sound of the arrow was unusually ear-piercing. The god of plagues moved to the side and avoided the arrow light. Before he could calm down, the scene of the battle changed. Black mountains, white water, and snow swords came at him. Using the sword as a brush and the sword essence as ink, streaks of black sword lights stabbed at the god of plagues' chest. The god of plagues waved his hand. The aura of darkness gathered and dispersed the thousands of sword lights. After fighting for so many days, the god of plagues grew impatient. He put his palms together and black energy surged out. In the battle, the female venerables, Luo Xingchen, Mu Qianshang and the others saw this, and their expressions changed slightly. They immediately retreated. The vast and endless power of darkness was unparalleled. The celestial venerables in the center of the battle were affected and their mouths turned red. After this seat devours the last source of the human realm, I will deal with you all. In the starry sky, the god of plagues glanced at the venerables who were forced to retreat. He snorted and walked away. We can't let him succeed. The female venerables said sternly. She stepped out and quickly gave chase. Behind her, Luo Xingchen, Mu Qianshang, Yixuan Miao and the others dashed out and followed her one after another. In the Ziwei star, Ning Fan's eyes became clearer under the heavenly tribulation. He turned around and looked at the 2 people on the shore. Finally, he could see their faces clearly. He could feel that they had been following him for many years. It was just that he could not see them. Everywhere in the Ziwei star region, the aura of darkness spread and devoured the source power of heaven and earth. Visible to the naked eye, the great stars of life turned into dead stars. The last pure land of the human realm was also about to disappear. The power around the god of plagues was getting stronger and stronger. He was only one step away from the 6th realm. In the Ziwei star, Ning Fan and Yu Ling, who were undergoing their tribulations, suddenly turned serious and looked at the sky. Above the sky, the aura of darkness covered the entire sky. It was so gloomy that it made it difficult for them to breathe. On the shore, Qing Ning and Yin Er's expressions changed when they saw the changes in the sky. The power of darkness. This is bad. Qing Ning took a step forward and dashed into the sky. She formed a spell with her fingers and the lotus light around her body shone brightly. The green lotus bloomed and blocked the spreading aura of darkness. Blood trickled down from the corner of her mouth. So this is where you guys are hiding. At this moment, a black-robed figure appeared in the sky. It was the god of plagues. He looked at the people in the sky and said with a cold expression. Sensing the killing intent from the sky, Ning Fan raised his head and frowned. The mortal's sword vibrated. Ning Fan took a step forward and soared into the sky, gaining the initiative by striking first. You overestimate yourself. The god of plagues raised his hand and slapped Ning Fan, who was soaring into the sky, with his palm. With a loud bang, Ning Fan fell into the river, causing waves that were several zhang tall to rise. On the immortal mountain 1,000 li away, Yuling stared at the sky. Her beautiful eyes flashed with surprise. At this moment, several figures appeared in the void. Led by the female venerate, Luo Xingchen, and the others, the celestial venerables of the human realm chased after them. Oh, the knowing destiny realm of this generation is really weak. Luo Xingchen glanced at Ning Fan, who was slapped into the river, and said with a fake smile. Chapter 1581. In the purple star, darkness descended. The god of plagues attacked and severely injured Ning Fan, who was at the Tao reasoning realm, with just a single palm strike. Then, the celestial venerables of the human race caught up to him in the void. Their powerful qi surrounded the god of plagues. 1,000 li away, Yuling stared at the group of celestial venerables with a strange expression. Are they immortals? They are indeed very strong. I can't believe there are such experts in this barren land. In the void, Mu Qianshang sensed the qi from 1,000 li away. Master! Below him, at the bank of the large river that was flowing against the current, Yin Er trotted forward. Looking at Ning Fan, who was falling into the river, her face was filled with worry. He's fine. In the void, the female venerable of Changling spoke. Protect your master. With his current strength, don't let him act rashly. Yin Er nodded and answered softly. In the river, blood dyed the water red. Ning Fan dashed out from the river and looked at the god of plagues in the sky with a grim expression. What a powerful fellow. Master, let's leave that monster to the female venerable and the others. We shouldn't take action. Yin Er flew forward and grabbed Ning Fan, who was about to attack again, and said softly. When Ning Fan heard that, he was stunned. He looked at the lady in front of him and asked in confusion. What did you call me? Master. Yin Er answered. Master? Ning Fan frowned slightly and asked. Miss, do you know me? Er thought for a while and said, You can say that. We used to know each other. His eyes swept across the experts of the mortal world who were hovering in the sky and asked. Do you know any of them? Er nodded and said. They are all heavenly Tao realm experts of the human world. Master, you are about the same as them now. However, you have too little experience in the martial Tao. You can't defeat any of them. Heavenly Tao realm. Ning Fan muttered softly. It turned out that his current realm was called the Heavenly Tao realm. Master can observe the battle of the female venerable and the others. That way, you can also familiarize yourself with the battles of cultivators as soon as possible. In her previous life, her master's combat experience was unparalleled. Going against the odds to slay immortals was a common occurrence. But in this life, her master's reincarnation had almost never fought as a cultivator. Even though he had stepped into the Heavenly Tao realm, he was the weakest Heavenly Tao realm. Above the void, the god of plagues and the heavenly lords of the human world started fighting again. The shocking battle waves shook the stars in the sky. Hundreds of celestial venerables in the human world gathered the strongest combat power of the human world. They were also the last hope of the human world. When the Empyreans of the mortal world appeared on the North Star, in the distance, in the immortal realms, the power of light permeated the air. Separated by an endless distance, the power of light was transmitted to the North Star. It was like an immortal realm with life, becoming the greatest barrier against the darkness in the human world. On the Emperor's Star, the celestial venerables of the human world were surrounded by light. They were powerful and full of light. You guys are really haunting me. The god of plagues looked at the surrounding celestial venerables and said coldly. If you don't die, we won't be able to eat or sleep in peace. The Changling female supreme responded coolly. Her demonic energy surged out. The 9 hell heaven-devouring demon scripture once again showed its astounding power. The great battle broke out again. The shadows of darkness and light danced. Their palms collided and their swords moved the world. Below, Ning Fan looked at the great battle in the sky. His eyes flashed with surprise. On the immortal mountain 1,000 li away, Yuling was also watching the battle between the celestial venerables and the god of plagues. Her chi also rose rapidly. Is this the battle between immortals? Perhaps I can do it too. After watching for a long time, white light shone around Yuling's body. Her true essence soared to the 9 heavens. All of a sudden, the wind and clouds changed and lightning fell from the 9 heavens. Under the lightning, Yuling took a step forward and walked in the sea of lightning in the sky. Step by step, she walked towards the east. In a few breaths' time, Yuling walked to the sky above the great river and arrived at the battle between the celestial venerables and the god of plagues. In the battle, the celestial venerables of the human world looked at the woman in the lightning tribulation with surprise. What a stunning woman! She actually broke through to the next realm while watching the battle. At the bank of the great river, the moment Yuling broke through to the next realm, the sword intent around Ning Fan also soared to the sky. His powerful chi was not inferior to Yuling, who just broke through to the next realm. At the side, saw this and immediately retreated. She did not dare to get involved in the heavenly tribulation. She broke through to the next realm again. This cultivation speed is really infuriating. In the battle, the god of plagues raised his hand and struck out a palm. The chi of darkness shook and destroyed everything. It was close at hand. The Changling female venerables took a step forward and her figure flashed, instinctively avoiding the power of the god of plagues. However, just as she dodged, she saw the woman who was walking towards her from the corner of her eyes. Her expression changed slightly. Not good. The chi of darkness spread rapidly and was about to affect Yuling, who was coming from 1,000 li away. The chi of darkness approached her. In the lightning, Yuling frowned. She raised her delicate hand and the moonlight shone brightly. With a rumble, a violent shock wave spread. Yuling took half a step back and the blood chi around her shook violently. The strength of the darkness was still unmatched. However, Yuling's performance shocked all the celestial venerables of the human world. In the void, the Changling female venerable's figure landed. She looked at Yuling in front of her and her eyes flashed with seriousness. Even she did not dare to take the power of the god of plagues head-on. However, the woman in front of her could take the palm of the god of plagues head-on. It was really unbelievable. Just as everyone was shocked, a ray of light soared into the sky from below, cutting through the darkness and stunning everyone. The god of plagues' expression changed slightly. He raised his hand and blocked the sword light that was about to kill him. Master! At the bank of the river, Air was shocked. Before she could regain her senses, the figure in front of her had already disappeared. In the void, Ning Fan arrived with an ordinary sword in his hand. The sword pressure was terrifying. In just a few hours, Ning Fan's chi had changed a lot. The feeling he gave others was as different as heaven and earth. His astonishing learning ability was better than any peerless genius. In the void, Ning Fan and Yuling stood quietly. Their bodies were bathed in lightning. Their chi was still rising continuously. It's you guys. In the battle, the god of plagues sensed the familiar chi from the two of them. His expression turned grim. Before this, the Lord of Darkness was severely injured by these two people. Today, he finally found them. The former lord of the human world and the mysterious woman of unknown origin. Just in time. It saves me the trouble of looking for you guys everywhere. The god of plagues raised his hand. Dark chi surged. All of a sudden, a black bridge of the great Tao appeared in the void. It was extremely blurry and was still far from being solid. However, even so, the appearance of the dark bridge brought unparalleled pressure to the celestial venerables in the human world. Those with weaker cultivation bases could not even move. Eldest princess, it seems like you and I have to join forces. In the void, Ning Fan said calmly. Joining forces with my former enemy is really a joke. Yu Ling stepped forward. Her body shone with dazzling white light. Very well. Let's do it together. The god of plagues said coldly. In the void, Qing Ning and the others looked surprised when they saw this scene. This day had finally come. Chapter 1582. On the purple star of the purple star, darkness descended. Ning Fan and Yu Ling broke through to the next realm at the same time and joined the battle. The sky was filled with lightning, as if it had been raging for 1,000 years. It was a world-shocking scene that shook the world. Above the void, Ning Fan swung his sword and slashed at the god of plagues. His sword was imbued with the supreme intent and it was indestructible. It was a simple sword move that was not exquisite. However, it was such an ordinary sword move that the god of plagues did not dare to be careless. At the same time, the moon spirit displayed astonishing abilities. Her entire body swirled with white radiance, transforming into tens of thousands of techniques and stabilizing the universe. The two of them worked together, alternating between offense and defense. Although it was their first time working together, their tacit understanding was flawless, as if they had known each other for thousands of years. In the beginning, both of them were at a disadvantage under the god of plagues' powerful strength. However, as the battle continued, both of their combat power increased rapidly and their coordination became better. This was an unexpected variable. The celestial venerables of the mortal realm looked at the two people in the battle, the shock in their hearts difficult to conceal. The strength of these two people was actually getting stronger and stronger. 9 underworlds devour heaven, underworld descends. The battle was in a stalemate. Outside the battle, Nu Chang shouted. The surrounding demonic energy surged, shaking the world. In front of everyone's shocked eyes, Nu Chang's demonic flames soared to the sky, and a black spear appeared in her hand. In the blink of an eye, Nu Chang's figure flashed, and her spear slashed out. Its extreme speed was even more shocking than lightning. The god of plagues' expression changed slightly as he raised his hand to block the black spear. With a loud rumble, the heavens and earth were overturned. The aura of darkness and demonic energy violently clashed, shaking the stars in the 9 heavens. At the same time, outside the battlefield, an arrow pierced through the air and shot towards the chest of the god of plagues. As the arrow approached him, the dark aura around the god of plagues surged and blocked the murderous intent. After a wave of attacks, the scenery between heaven and earth changed. The ink painting of mountains and rivers spread out. The black mountains and white waters turned into swords and slashed towards the god of plagues. Your teamwork isn't bad, but you will still lose. The god of plagues raised his hand to block the layers of sword gleams. His body moved and dark aura rose as he launched a full-scale counterattack. In the middle of the battle, Ning Fan stepped forward. His mortal sword was surrounded by 10,000 layers of sword qi. Its sharpness was dazzling and merciless. You want to hurt me with a mere mortal sword? Naive. The god of plagues clasped his fingers together and clamped down on the ordinary sword. Immediately, he exerted force in his fingers and broke the sword with a loud bang. Ning Fan's mouth turned red and he was forced to take a few steps back. Behind Ning Fan, Yu Ling stepped forward. Both of their figures intertwined with each other. Ning Fan's figure dashed forward once again with the help of his palm. The sword qi rose again and pierced towards the chest of the god of plagues. The god of plagues did not face the continuous attacks head-on. Instead, he stepped out to avoid the sword aura one after another. The 5 venerables of the human realm joined forces and attacked continuously. Even someone as strong as the god of plagues could not escape in a short period of time. It was hard to tell who was winning or losing in the battle. In the battle, the 5 venerables of the human realm pushed their combat power to the limit and besieged the source of darkness. Meanwhile, in the Zhu residence in the capital city of the Wu dynasty, Zhu Yi, who had his dragon bone destroyed by Ning Fan's sword, opened his eyes at this moment. The Marquis is awake. The maid in charge of taking care of Zhu Yi called out in alarm. In the estate, the physician rushed over upon hearing the news. After examining Zhu Ye's condition, he frowned slightly. Zhu Ho's body was healing on its own. Above the void, the dark aura that seeped out from the battlefield permeated the air. Wisps and wisps of dark aura continuously flew to every corner of the human world. As the darkness energy entered Zhu Ye's body, the dragon bone injuries on his back slowly healed. Not long after, Zhu Yi got up from the bed. He looked at the horizon, and specks of light flashed in his eyes. "Help me out," Zhu said. "Understood." Beside him, the maid went forward and carefully helped Zhu Ho up. Then they walked outside together. The battle in the sky was intense. However, the aftermath of the battle did not spread to the human world as it was covered by the celestial venerables. However, the dark aura that permeated every corner of the Z-Way star was getting denser and denser. Zhu Yi stood in the courtyard, looking at the horizon. His eyes slowly narrowed. What a familiar power! What a powerful power! In the void, the god of plague's heart skipped a beat as if he had sensed something. This feeling, this him. He's actually still alive. While he was in a daze for a short while, Ning Fan's figure flashed in the battle. He put two of his fingers together and a sword chi broke through the darkness. Ugh! When the sword chi entered his body, the god of plagues let out a muffled groan and took half a step back. Impudent! The god of plagues regained his senses. His expression turned grim and he launched a palm attack with all his might. The power of darkness was deadly. Behind him, Nu stepped forward and met the attack head-on with a palm attack. With a loud rumble, the darkness and devil chi clashed again. The rumbling sound reverberated throughout the entire universe. Nu retreated a few steps back. The corner of her mouth turned red. Ning Fan let out a deep roar. He activated the sword intent around him again and channeled all of it into the god of plague's body. The god of plagues took another half a step back. The dark aura inside his body shook violently. With the combined efforts of the venerated beings, the source of darkness showed signs of defeat for the first time. At this moment, outside the battle, the falling star condensed his essence and drew the bow. A black arrow light materialized. The black arrow light that was filled with destructive power kept devouring the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. All of a sudden, the arrow light pierced through the sky and flew out with a loud whistle. In front of the god of plagues, the arrow light collided with the dark aura that filled the air. The collision between the two forces was unusually intense. The black arrow light was obstructed and could not move forward. At the critical moment, a moon-white light spread across the battlefield, dispelling the dark aura in front of the god of plagues. All of a sudden, the black arrow light flew past and penetrated the god of plague's chest. Ugh! The arrow pierced through his body. Blood sprayed all over the sky. The god of plagues let out a painful groan and kept retreating. It's still not enough. The god of plagues dispersed the black arrow light that entered his body. His dark aura surged and quickly healed his injuries. With the undying indestructible body, the injuries inside his body healed rapidly. In the blink of an eye, all the arrow wounds were healed. Something's not right. At this moment, the god of plague's face suddenly darkened. He looked at his chest that had healed and his expression turned solemn. There was poison on the arrow. Did you notice? It took me a lot of effort to break your undying body. Outside the battle, the falling star looked at the god of plagues in front of him and mocked. Before he finished his sentence, the wound on the god of plagues' chest suddenly appeared again. It was as if there was a hole in his chest. It was a shocking sight. The bone-eroding poison was extremely toxic. It kept eating away at the god of plagues' flesh and blood to strengthen itself. Insignificant tricks. The god of plagues snorted. The dark aura in his body swirled around, trying to dispel the bone-eroding poison. However, how could the lords in the human world give him the chance to do so? In the battle, a beautiful figure flashed past. The moon-white light lingered around her and her palm landed on the god of plague's chest. The moon-white light could transform into thousands of rays. The dark aura around the god of plagues paused for a moment and dissipated. Without the suppression of the dark aura, the bone-eroding poison in the god of plague's body started to spread again and grow stronger. At the same time, in the backyard of the Zhu residence, Zhu Yi closed his eyes and stood quietly. He was devouring the dark aura that permeated the world bit by bit. From the postnatal realm to the connate realm, then to the immortal treading realm, the mortal dust realm, and finally the heavenly Tao realm. Zhu Ye's aura rose rapidly at an unbelievable speed. As Zhu Ye's aura rose rapidly, in the battle in the sky, the god of plague's dark aura was rapidly weakening. The depletion was getting more and more intense. Chapter 1583. On the crepe myrtle star, the venerables of the human world were fighting against the god of plagues. It was an astonishing battle that made the sky lose its color. The god of plagues was severely injured and showed signs of defeat for the first time. And in the Wu dynasty's capital, in Zhu Marquis residence, Zhu Ye's aura was constantly rising. It went from the postnatal realm to the connate realm, immortal stepping realm, and mortal realm to the heavenly Tao realm. It was a shocking scene. In the void, not only the god of plagues, but even the venerables in the human world could sense it. This was Zhu Yi. Ning Fan, who was in the middle of the battle, felt something and his expression changed slightly. How is this possible? He's back. The heavily injured god of plagues felt a sense of fear. But wasn't he dead? In the Zhu Marquis estate, Zhu Yi slowly opened his eyes. He looked at the horizon and walked up step by step. Inside the Zhu estate, the maids and soldiers were shocked by this sight. Zhu Ho had ascended to the heavens. In the void, Zhu Yi strode over. As he watched the god of plagues in battle, his dazed eyes gradually cleared up. I've said it before. When I return, I'll show you what true darkness is. Zhu Yi said as he raised his right hand. Instantly, black streams of air gushed out from the god of plagues' body like a flood. The god of plagues was terrified. He wanted to stop the vitality of darkness from leaking out of his body, but he was unable to do so. Everything you have was given to you by me. Today I will take it all back. With that, Zhu Yi walked up to the god of plagues and plunged his hand into the latter's chest. The splattering blood dyed the battlefield red. The god of plagues struggled violently, but he could not break free from the Lord of Darkness's restraints. Outside the battle, the venerables of the human world were shocked when they saw this scene. It was him, the Lord of Darkness. Ning Fan stared at Zhu Yi, whose qi was getting stronger and stronger in front of him. His expression turned slightly grim. Without daring to delay any longer, he formed a sword with his fingers and dashed forward. The surging and sharp sword light was about to strike the Master of Darkness. However, just as the sword light was about to touch the Master of Darkness, it abruptly stopped. Boundless black currents surged around Zhu Yi, blocking the sword radiance. My good friend, don't be impatient. Once I've settled the matter at hand, I'll catch up with you. Zhu Yi turned his head and said indifferently. The qi around his body fluctuated, forcing Ning Fan, who was behind him, to retreat. 10 zhang away from her, Ning Fan came to a stop. He stared at the Lord of Darkness in front of him with a solemn expression. What a terrifying power! Up ahead, Zhu Yi pulled out the origin energy pearl from the god of plague's chest within the surging streams of darkness. Afterwards, he threw a punch and shattered the god of plague's body. Up in the sky, blood and bones scattered all over the place like rain. Even though he had been ambitious and ruthless for his entire life, what fell was even worse than a sky full of blood and bones. After the source pearl returned, Zhu Ye's aura changed drastically. He directly broke through to the monarch tier, and he was already half a step into the Genesis tier. In an instant, dark clouds covered the sky, and a dark aura covered the stars in the sky. Good friend, let's settle our old and new grudges today. After gathering all his energy, Zhu Yi turned around and indifferently said to the familiar yet unfamiliar figure in plain clothes. Ning Fan stared at the Lord of Darkness in front of him. His expression turned even colder. The dark energy in the air was like an ocean, turning the entire sky into a world of darkness. It was heavy and cold. Both inside and outside the battlefield, Nu Chang, Mu Qianshang, Luo Xingchen and the others all froze, even their movements becoming difficult. In the blink of an eye, Zhu Ye's figure flashed past, his palms sweeping out in all directions like a tidal wave. The heavenly sovereigns of the mortal world were all sent flying by the impact of the dark energy. The corners of their mouths turned red. In the center of the battlefield, Ning Fan and Yu Ling were also affected by the impact. They took a few steps back and were severely injured. It was a one-sided battle. With the return of the Lord of Darkness, the darkness once again gained the upper hand. The heavenly sovereigns of the mortal world were now in a life-and-death situation. The heavenly sovereigns who were stained with blood and had immortal battle souls dashed out one after another, joining forces to stop the darkness from growing stronger. How can the light of a firefly fight against the darkness? Zhu Yi raised his hand and the dark energy spread out, sending the heavenly sovereigns of the mortal world flying one after another. After the return of the Lord of Darkness, the heavenly sovereigns of the mortal world were completely defeated. Night fell on the mortal world. Darkness filled the surroundings. The bodies of the heavenly sovereigns of the mortal world were dyed red. Even the strongest among them, Nu Chang, was severely injured. In the battlefield, Yu Ling's expression gradually turned grim as she looked at the sorrowful scene of the mortal world that was filled with darkness. She would never allow anyone to destroy the 100 generations of prosperity that she had created. Ha! Yu Ling let out a deep roar. Her black hair danced wildly in the air and her aura force rapidly rose. She broke through her limit. Her blood essence soared into the sky, dazzling and blinding. Her strong willpower did not allow anyone to waver. In the sky above Yu Ling, spots of white moonlight spread out. It was so bright. Her state of mind was clear and bright, illuminating the darkness. In Yu Ling's eyes, a trace of vicissitudes of life flashed past, reflecting the reincarnation cycle after cycle. This qi. In the battlefield, Mu Qianshang and Qing Ning's expressions changed drastically. There was no mistake. It was her. The former strongest expert of the divine great land, Fan Lingyue. In the void, the memories of the past reincarnations were replayed. 1,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. Her light blue dress fluttered in the wind. Her fine black hair danced in the wind and was dyed red. The past flashed past like smoke. Yu Ling's gaze swept across the mortal world and everyone present. In the end, it stopped at Ning Fan, who was not far away. After staring at him for a while, Yu Ling retracted her gaze and looked at Qing Ning below. Qing Ning, long time no see. How have you been? It's really... Qing Ning's figure slowly rose. She stared at the woman in front of her and said calmly, Fan Lingyue. As soon as her voice fell, the faces of the heavenly sovereigns of the mortal world were filled with surprise, especially the experts from the inner world. All of them had heard of this legendary name. Fan Lingyue was an opponent that even knowing Destiny Realm experts were helpless against. She was also the only person who could completely suppress knowing Destiny Realm experts in the same era. In the void, all the heavenly sovereigns of the mortal world looked at the woman in front of them, as if they wanted to see what was different about this legendary woman. So you have also reincarnated? Zhu Yi looked at Yu Ling in front of him and said calmly. In the past 1,000 years, it was not his first time meeting this woman's reincarnation. Fan Lingyue. In the void, Yu Ling murmured softly. What a distant name. It seemed that she had not heard anyone call her that for a long time. The memories of the past reincarnations returned. Fan Lingyue looked at the horizon. Her eyes flashed with light. These 1,000 years were too long. Absolute beginning of purification. Fan Lingyue opened her mouth. All of a sudden, lightning flashed in the void. The ancient divine sword that was destroyed in the heavenly tribulation 1,000 years ago appeared. The sword of purification Dao severing sword reappeared in the mortal world after more than 2,000 years. Fan Lingyue held the sword with both hands and slowly pulled it out. In an instant, the power of world purification spread rapidly in the void, dispelling all the darkness. 1,000 feet away, the white brilliance of the moon spread. The Lord of Darkness's expression turned serious. She activated her dark aura to block the power of world purification. The power of darkness and the power of world purification clashed. It was only a momentary stalemate. The power of world purification broke through the darkness and touched the Lord of Darkness. It was a shocking scene. The flesh and blood of the Lord of Darkness were quickly purified by the power of world purification. White bones could be vaguely seen. It's not your turn to destroy the mortal world. In the void, Fan Lingyue stepped forward with her sword in hand. She looked at the Lord of Darkness in front of her, murderous intent in her eyes. Chapter 1584. She's back. In the void, the heavenly venerables of the human world looked at the woman who was fighting against the Lord of Darkness with solemn expressions. Fan Lingyue was once the strongest person in the divine prefecture and the wisest person in the world. In the battle, Qi pierced through the sky. The white moonlight was dazzling, purifying all the darkness in the world. The chest of the Lord of Darkness was purified by the white moonlight. Her flesh and blood dispersed, revealing her bones. Not far away, Ning Fan suppressed the astonishment in his heart when he saw this. He took a step forward and dashed out at lightning speed. He formed a sword with his fingers and pierced the chest of the Lord of Darkness with a deadly sharp sword Qi. Ugh! The sword Qi pierced through the body and blood splattered everywhere. Ji took a few steps back. Looking at the two people in front of him, his face was filled with shock. It was like the reincarnation of fate, meeting each other again and again. After 100 reincarnations, everyone would finally return. The power of light had yet to fully recover. The Lord of Darkness raised her hand and grabbed Ning Fan's arm, intending to kill him before he returned. Behind her, Fan Lingyue arrived. She condensed her primordial essence and blocked the power of darkness. "You are too weak in this life," Fan Lingyue said while blocking the Lord of Darkness at a close distance. The aftermath of the battle shook the surroundings. Ning Fan's body was already severely injured several times. His white robes were dyed red, which was unusually dazzling. "You don't have to interfere in this battle. Retreat first." Fan Lingyue waved her hand and pushed Ning Fan, who was at the side, away. With a soft shout, she raised her cultivation technique again. The white moonlight rose to the extreme. It was holy and bright. It was a pure technique that could purify all the techniques of heaven and earth. The power of darkness was impacted and trembled continuously. The Lord of Darkness's dark Qi was strong and destructive, confronting the pure power head-on. The strongest darkness and light clashed in the void. Rumbling sounds resounded throughout the universe. They were in a stalemate. Injuries kept appearing on the Lord of Darkness's body, but they were recovering rapidly. After going through reincarnation, her undying body became more complete. Destruction and rebirth were continuously reincarnated in the Lord of Darkness. The ruler of darkness was also getting closer to the Genesis realm. In the battle, Fan Lingyue sensed the change in the Lord of Darkness's aura. She no longer dragged the battle on. She activated all of her primordial essence and strengthened her attacks. Facing the strongest person in the divine prefecture who had returned after 100 reincarnations, even though the Lord of Darkness was already close to the Genesis realm, she still felt a great pressure. Boom! In the blink of an eye, Fan Lingyue raised his hand and grabbed the Lord of Darkness by the shoulder, throwing him directly toward the mountain peak in the distance. 100 miles away, the body of the Master of Darkness crashed into a mountain peak, directly breaking the mountain ridge. Crushed rocks flew everywhere like a rain of rocks. In the void, Fan Lingyue looked 100 miles away. Taking a step forward, her figure shot out swiftly. The Master of Darkness rushed out from the rain of stones. However, before it could retaliate, Fan Lingyue's figure had already arrived. The aura of darkness couldn't be stopped. Fan Lingyue's body was shrouded in a moon-white brilliance. He raised his hand and grabbed the throat of the Master of Darkness once more, flinging it towards the ground. Boom, boom, boom. With a series of violent tremors, the body of the Master of Darkness smashed into the ground, causing 1,000 feet of sand and dust to fly up. The Master of Darkness was injured again and again, but he charged out again and again. His heavily injured body was recovering at an extremely fast speed. He was almost indestructible. "Jingye absolute beginning," Fan Lingyue spoke. The ancient divine sword flew over and slashed down, unleashing the cleansing karma-severing das. The Master of Darkness raised his hand and blocked the sword. However, it was only a momentary stalemate. The Jingya sword cut through the obstruction of devil chi and severed the arm of the Master of Darkness. Blood splattered everywhere, dyeing the blue sky red. The Master of Darkness let out a muffled groan. His expression became more and more shocked. His blood flowed back and the severed arm of the Master of Darkness regrew. In the blink of an eye, it was as good as new. When Fan Lingyue saw this scene, his eyes flashed with cold intent. It seemed like he wouldn't be able to kill the ruler of the Dark World without destroying the origin of the Master of Darkness. With that thought in mind, Fan Lingyue glanced at Ning Fan, who was outside the battle. Her expression turned grim. She needed his help. The Master of Darkness knew the importance of his origin. Thus, he would definitely be cautious. She needed the cooperation of someone with absolute speed to destroy the origin of the Master of Darkness. However, he had yet to awaken. Boom! In the battle, Fan Lingyue sent the Master of Darkness flying with a palm strike. Then, he flashed past and thrust his sword at the Master of Darkness Danton. The Master of Darkness raised his hand and grabbed the sharp edge of the divine sword. Even though his body was injured, he wanted to protect his origin of darkness. Outside the battle, Nu Chang and the others also saw the key to the battle. Their expressions turned grim. It wasn't easy for an opportunity to appear. However, it was even more difficult to seize it. Not only did they have to cooperate well with each other, more importantly, they had to have absolute speed to seize the opportunity. However, knowing destiny had yet to awaken. If knowing destiny hadn't awakened, the phoenix wouldn't have awakened. Without the phoenix's extreme speed, it would be very difficult for them to win this battle. In the battle, the Master of Darkness raised his hand and counterattacked. The moment he touched Fan Lingyue, the pure karma primordial sword arrived and cut open his flesh. Darkness and light restrained each other. In Fan Lingyue's hand, the pure karma primordial sword cut through all laws. Even the darkness could not stop it. Since the appearance of darkness in the mortal world, it was the first time it was suppressed like this. The strongest person in the divine continent, the wisest person in the world, had returned after 100 reincarnations and displayed astonishing ability. Outside the battle, Ning Fan looked at the great battle in front of him. His eyes flickered continuously. The familiar feeling seemed to be engraved in his bones. After 100 reincarnations, he could no longer forget it. But in the mortal world, the blades of swords vibrated. The sounds of swords clashing resounded through the sky. In the mortal world, the cultivators looked at the swords in their hands with astonishment. In the void, the venerated beings in the mortal world heard the sounds of swords and looked at the mortal world. What happened? Master! Looked at the figure in plain clothes in the sky and murmured softly. Has Master returned? Beside her, Qing Ning also looked at Ning Fan in the sky, waiting for the result. The extraordinary phenomenon was astonishing. The venerated beings in the mortal world regained their senses one after another. All of them looked at the white-haired figure in the void. Is the former ruler of the mortal world coming back? At the next moment, rays of sword light appeared in the mortal world. Boundless sword pressure shook heaven and earth. In the void, the figure in plain clothes stood quietly. His white hair fluttered in the wind. In the battle, Fan Lingyue swung his sword to repel the Master of Darkness. When he felt the pure karma primordial sword in his hand, his face revealed a strange expression. He has finally returned. At the same time, the 4 immortal swords that were buried in the depths of the starry sky that were destroyed by the power of darkness began to vibrate, as if they had sensed the chi of their master. In the void above the Emperor's star, the white-haired figure in plain clothes slowly opened his eyes. His chaotic eyes gradually became clear. Raise your swords. As soon as he raised his sword, heaven and earth shook. In the mortal world, tens of thousands of sword lights soared into the sky. The terrifying power caused the entire Emperor's star to shake. In the battle, the Master of Darkness was shocked when he saw what happened. In the void, tens of thousands of swords floated up and down, condensing into sword clouds. The brilliance of the swords dispersed the darkness and illuminated the mortal world. In an instant, 4 rays of sword light broke through the void and flew towards the Emperor Star at an extremely fast speed. Welcome, Realm Lord. The return of the mortal world's ruler made all the venerated beings in the mortal world come back to their senses and salute respectfully. Chapter 1585. In the mortal world, tens of thousands of swords rushed over from all directions, flying towards the horizon. It was an earth-shattering scene. Tens of thousands of swords gathered to form a cloud, and the sword light illuminated the world. In the void, knowing destiny opened his eyes. The 100 reincarnation cycle was completed, and the memories of each life began to flow backward. With the return of the power of 10 lifetimes, the knowing destiny state directly broke through to the monarch realm. His sword pressure swept out and his sword momentum was shocking. From all over the starry skies, the 4 immortal swords turned into streams of light that flew towards the Emperor Star, leaving behind dazzling sword scars in the void. On the North Star, everyone bowed, respectfully welcoming the return of their master. Everyone's attention was fixed on knowing Ming. Phoenix flames rose around him and the cries of phoenixes resounded through the starry sky. Welcome back. In the battlefield, Fan Lingyue, who was dressed in a light blue dress, spoke with a calm expression. It's been 1,000 years. How have you been? Ningchen said with a smile on his face. 5 kilometers away, the Lord of Darkness rose into the air. Dark energy swirled around him as he looked at the 2 cultivators in front of him. His expression darkened, and he didn't say a single word. Skybreaker. Ningchen glanced at the Lord of Darkness. He slashed with his fingers, and the sword light broke through the darkness. It was a simple sword strike, but it contained the power of heaven and earth. Within 10 miles, the sword light cut through the void and blocked the dark aura. Prairie fire. After the first sword strike, Ning Fan swung his sword again. The phoenix flames around his body soared to the sky. With the help of the flames, all the darkness in the world was incinerated. The sword light surged and instantly reached the Lord of Darkness. Its shocking power shocked all the gods and demons in the heavens. The Lord of Darkness focused and clasped his hands together to block the blazing prairie sword. Phoenix flames and the power of darkness clashed against each other. The shockwaves from the collision shook the heavens and the earth. After a moment of stalemate, the blazing prairie sword broke through the darkness. The sword was unstoppable and slashed across the left shoulder of the Lord of Darkness. Blood splattered everywhere. It was so dazzling. The knowing destiny sword had become even more powerful after reincarnation. The 2 swords displayed their might. Not far away, Fan Lingyue's figure moved at the same time. Jingye Taichu slashed out, his sword might similarly shocking. The 2 strongest warriors of the divine Great Land had joined hands, wielding their swords with perfect coordination. Faced with the combined might of the 2 strongest king tiers, the Master of Darkness, who was already half a step into the Genesis tier, was still at a disadvantage. There were many parts of its body that were dyed red. Reverse form. Ning Chen's divine energy surged as he struck out with a palm strike right at the Darkness Sovereign's chest. The Qilin Peerless Qilin used the reverse formless style to reverse the flow of his meridians and forcefully destroy the Master of Darkness martial bones. The martial nullification technique had instantly dealt a heavy blow to the Master of Darkness. With a rumbling sound, the Darkness King's figure flew out, smashing into a distant mountain ridge. In the void, Ning Chen and Fan Lingyue walked side by side. Their eyes were fixed on the Master of Darkness at the foot of the mountain ridge in the distance. However, under the collapsed mountain ridge, the dark aura continued to rise and did not weaken at all. Let's work together to destroy his source of darkness. Otherwise, he will be reborn endlessly. Fan Lingyue said solemnly. Who's first? Ning Chen asked. I'll do it. You look for an opportunity and get ready to attack. Fan Lingyue said. She took a step forward and leaped out. Below the mountain ridge, the Darkness Master stood up and roared angrily. In the air above, the phantom of a giant desolate beast appeared. It was ferocious and terrifying. In the battle, Ning Chen stood quietly. His eyes narrowed as he stared at the phantom of the wild beast that appeared in the void. Compared to the last time they fought, the power of the Darkness Master was stronger. Moreover, with the previous lesson, the Darkness Master would definitely protect his source of darkness with all his might. He might only have a chance to attack for an instant. In the void, the desolate beast roared angrily. The dark aura spread and supported the power of the Darkness Master. In front, Fan Lingyue's expression turned solemn. She activated the moonlight and the purification sword slashed down from the sky again. The power of purification was invincible. The power of darkness could not stop it. After a momentary stalemate, it broke through. Similarly, the Darkness Master, who had gathered all his power, retaliated with a majestic palm. The power of darkness broke through the obstruction of the moonlight and landed on Fan Lingyue's chest. The power of darkness closed in. Fan Lingyue used the purification sword of the Absolute, beginning to block the power of darkness. There was a violent tremor. Both sides of the battle were impacted by the power of darkness and light. They both took half a step back. Drops of vermilion blood stained her light blue dress. Before the blood was completely gone, Fan Lingyue's figure had already dashed out again. Under the giant phantom of the desolate beast, Fan Lingyue's figure dashed forward. The purification sword slashed across and the moonlight shone brightly. Boom! The Darkness Master raised her hand and received the purification sword of the Absolute Beginning. The two powerful auras clashed again, distorting time and space. The intense battle was beyond imagination. After a momentary stalemate, red flames spread in the battle. Phoenix blood feathers drifted and covered the sky. The next moment, a red light flashed across the void. Its speed was even faster than lightning. In the blink of an eye, a white-haired figure dashed out amidst the phoenix flames. His sword finger condensed into essence and pierced into the Darkness Master's chest. Ugh! With a muffled groan, blood spurted from the Darkness Master's mouth. She took a few steps back. Retreat! When he succeeded, Ning Chen's expression suddenly turned serious. He took Fan Lingyue and quickly retreated from the battle. In the battle, a huge hole appeared on the Darkness Master's chest. It was penetrated by the sword aura. The source pearl could be seen clearly. The source pearl of darkness had cracks all over it. The dark aura spread wildly and was about to be destroyed. However, both inside and outside the battle, at this moment, everyone's expression was abnormally heavy. In the void, the Darkness Master let out a pained roar. The power of darkness rose to the extreme. All the power of darkness in the collapsed source pearl of darkness erupted and quickly spread to every corner of the human world. Then, an earth-shattering scene took place. In the void, a huge bridge of darkness appeared. It spanned across the human world and was shockingly majestic. The moment the bridge of darkness appeared, the sword wound on the Darkness Master's chest rapidly healed. The Genesis realm finally appeared in the world. Then, in the void, bridges of the Great Tao appeared one after another. The 47 Great Tao rules resonated with each other from afar. The pressure was extremely shocking. The bridges of the Great Tao could only be seen by those above the heavenly Tao realm. Each of them was larger than a mountain range. They were simple and solemn, not to be blasphemed. Below, the cultivators of the human world felt the pressure from the bridges of the Great Tao. Their bodies involuntarily trembled. The human world has actually collapsed to such an extent. At this moment, golden light shone brightly on one of the bridges of the Great Tao. A figure whose might shook the 9 heavens and 10 lands walked out. He was surrounded by golden light as if a saint had descended into the human world. The great calamity of the world and the collapse of the human world are just the signs of the beginning of a new era. After the golden figure appeared, not far away, on another bridge of the Great Tao, a 7-colored brilliance appeared. An old man with the demeanor of an immortal walked out. He looked at the plain-clothed figure in the void and said with a smile, "My good disciple, long time no see. It's you." In the void, Ning Chen looked at the old man who appeared in the sky. His expression darkened. "Master Mo." At the side, Fan Lingyue looked at the two people on the bridge of the Great Tao. His eyes narrowed slightly. Those who should come out had all come out. Chapter 1586. In the mortal realm, the last pure land, bridges of the Great Tao appeared one after another, welcoming the god of darkness who had broken through to the Genesis tier. The Netherworld King had fallen, and the most terrifying existence that suppressed the Great Tao had disappeared. The Genesis tier saints appeared one after another, and their might was extremely terrifying. In the void, golden light, rainbow light, and white light filled the air. On the bridges of the Great Tao, 3 Genesis tier saints walked out and stood in the void. They all had faint smiles on their faces, and they were peaceful yet filled with inviolable holiness. The Genesis tier saints were the most powerful beings since ancient times. They had formed their own Tao and surpassed everything. In the sky, Lord Mo, who was enshrouded in rainbow light, Saint Golden Light, who was enshrouded in golden light, and Saint White Lotus, who was enshrouded in dazzling white light, looked at the newly ascended Lord of Darkness and nodded in greeting. Facing the goodwill of the 3 Genesis tier saints, even the God of Darkness didn't dare to be arrogant and returned the greeting. Master of Darkness, you've already reached the Genesis tier, and it's not suitable for you to stay in the mortal realm anymore. Why don't you come with us? The White Lotus Saint said with a smile. The God of Darkness nodded slightly and said, I'll do as you say. After saying that, the God of Darkness didn't say anything else and walked toward the sky. You can't leave. In the void, a dark expression flashed across Ning Chen's face. He took a step in the air, and phoenix flames appeared around him again. He formed a sword with his fingers and slashed at the God of Darkness who was about to leave. My good disciple, don't interfere in this matter. At this moment, Mo Zhu, who was shrouded in rainbow light, appeared in front of Ji Ming in an instant. He reached out his withered right hand and touched Ji Ming's body. Boom! The most terrifying scene was when Mo Zhu reached out and touched Ji Ming's body. The blood feathers in the sky scattered and scattered everywhere. Ning Chen's body suddenly fell and crashed into the ground. Ji Ming! In the void, Qing Ning and the others, who were suppressed by the aura of the 3 Genesis tier saints, exclaimed in shock. I'm fine. On the ground, Ning Chen struggled to get up. Phoenix flames appeared on his body again, and the phoenix wings on his back quickly recovered. Phoenixes are indeed the creatures with the most tenacious vitality in this world. In the sky, the Golden Light Saint, who was covered in dazzling golden light, looked down at Ning Chen, who was quickly recovering, and said calmly, Let me see just how tenacious the phoenix's vitality is. On the side, the White Lotus Saint's lips curled up slightly. She flipped her left hand, and suddenly, the chaotic White Lotus bloomed. A powerful destructive force fell from the sky, pressing down on Ning Chen below. The power of the Genesis tier was already not something that this world could bear. Wherever the primal chaos White Lotus passed, the whole heaven and earth would turn into nothingness. Down below, Ning Chen's expression sank slightly as he let out a long shout. Sword insight rose rapidly around him, and a blazing sword light forcefully blocked the chaotic White Lotus that descended from the sky. However, those below the Great Tao were all ants, so how could the power of a Genesis tier be so easily blocked? Above Ning Chen, tens of thousands of sword lights collapsed as the primal chaos White Lotus pressed down. At this critical moment, at the edge of the starry sky, 4 streaks of sword light pierced through the air, instantly ending the battle. The 4 immortal slaying swords returned. A shocking baleful aura filled the air. Mixed with the supreme sword intent, it blocked the chaotic White Lotus. Oh! In the sky, the White Lotus Saint saw this and a strange expression flashed across her face. She said, Are these the legendary 4 immortal swords? Seems like it. The Golden Light Saint said calmly, It's indeed a good treasure. In ancient times, I've heard that the master of the celestial realm wielded the 4 immortal slaying swords and was invincible. I've always wanted to see it, but I never had the chance. Today, I've finally seen it. The White Lotus Saint looked at the menacing 4 immortal slaying swords below with an indifferent expression. This person should be the reincarnation of the master of the celestial realm. However, it seems that his memories and power have not completely returned, the Golden Light Saint replied. Reincarnation? The White Lotus Saint's eyes narrowed slightly as she said, "That's boring. The two of you, let's go. Don't waste any more time." Not far away, Master Mo spoke with a smile. The White Lotus Saint turned around and said, "Master Mo is really cold. Isn't this your disciple in the mortal realm? Don't you want to chat a little more?" "There's no need." Master Mo smiled faintly. He glanced at the Master of Darkness nearby and said, "Let's go." The Master of Darkness nodded. He looked at Ning Chen below and said in a deep voice, "I will wait for you in the sky. The next time we meet, I will definitely take your life." As soon as he finished speaking, the great Tao bridges between heaven and earth disappeared. The Master of Darkness and the three Saints of Creation also left, disappearing at the end of time and space. Below, the phoenix flames around Ning Chen gradually retracted, and his aura returned to normal. "Master." 10 miles away, rushed over and asked with a concerned expression, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Ning Chen shook his head and said, "It's just a minor injury." In the void, Fan Lingyue's figure landed. He waved his hand and put away the sword of purification. He asked calmly, "How is it?" "Very strong." Ning Chen said seriously, "Even if it's just one of them, it's enough to destroy the entire mortal realm. They are all monsters that have experienced countless eras in the mortal realm. Previously, with the suppression of the Nether King, they did not dare to show themselves easily. Now that the Nether King has fallen, no one can stop them anymore," Fan Lingyue said. "Who are they exactly?" Qing Ning walked over and asked in a serious voice. "They are not humans, but Tao." Fan Lingyue replied, "The great Tao of the entire world. After living for a long time, even a pig can become a demon." Ning Chen said coldly, "Where's the heavenly book?" Fan Lingyue asked. "It's here." Ning Chen flipped his left hand. Silver light spread, and the heavenly book of creation appeared. "Preserve it well. It may be the key to rebuilding the mortal realm," Fan Lingyue said seriously. "How do you know all this?" Ning Chen was puzzled. "Previously, when I fused with the Ming Scroll, I saw some fragments of the future. Among them were the appearance of these saints of creation and the collapse of the mortal realm," Fan Lingyue replied. Ning Chen nodded. After a moment of silence, he asked, "Has the Nether King really fallen? Are you still unwilling to believe the truth?" Fan Lingyue looked at the person in front of him and said calmly, "The Nether King is dead. Prince Yen is also dead. Everything can lie, but this vanished great Tao aura will not lie." Hearing this, Ning Chen's body trembled slightly. After a moment, he returned to normal. "Next, I will work on repairing the heavenly pillar. If you wish for them to have a place to stay in the near future, then rebuild this mortal realm with me," Fan Lingyue said as she looked at the mortal realm that was still collapsing. Not far away, the sovereigns of the mortal realm looked at the two people in front of them. As if they had found their backbone, they no longer panicked. The female Chang stepped forward. Looking at Knowing Destiny, who was dyed red, she said softly, "Welcome back." With that, the female Chang looked at Fan Lingyue and said with a smile, "Seeing is better than hearing by reputation. The wise person who can make Knowing Destiny helpless is indeed extraordinary." "You flatter me," Fan Lingyue said calmly. "Female supreme of Changling, the Nether King has fallen, and the demonic path has no supremacy. I hope you can grasp this rare opportunity. One day, we will fight our way up to the 9 heavens and destroy the source of the great calamity. At that time, we will need your strength." Chapter 1587. In the human world, streaks of flowing light flew past one after another for the sky-mending pillar. All the venerables of the human world were mobilized as they traversed the mountains and rivers. They traversed all the great danger zones in search of the legendary sky-mending divine materials: Chaos Water, Chaos Fire, Chaos Wood, and Chaos Earth. It was a divine object that only existed in legends, and no one in the mortal world had ever seen it before. However, the great calamity of the world was right before their eyes, and all the venerables in the mortal world could do was to go against the heavens. In the immortal domain, the white-clothed figure stood there quietly. Her head of white hair fluttered in the wind, exceptionally dazzling. At the side, Fan Lingyue, who wore a light blue dress, gazed into the distance with a calm and indifferent expression. In the heavenly book, I saw the chaotic earth, but I didn't see the other 3 divine chaos materials. However, according to my speculation, the key to finding the other 3 divine chaos materials lies with you, Fan Lingyue said calmly. Ning Chen looked at the world quietly. After a long time, he said, "Perhaps I know the whereabouts of the other 3 divine chaos materials." Behind them, Qing Ning, Mu Qianshang and the others were listening to their conversation. They looked at each other, not understanding the meaning behind their words. As expected, people who are too smart are not likable. Luo Xingchen said unhappily, "If you have something to say, just say it. Why are you beating around the bush? Just because you don't understand doesn't mean that others don't understand." Mu Qianshang's expression was calm as he mocked, "Don't compare us to you, it's too embarrassing." "You want to fight?" Luo Xingchen yelled furiously upon hearing this. "Let's fight then. I'm not afraid of you." Mu Qianshang did not back down in the slightest as he retorted. "All right, stop arguing." Nu Chang said, "Something is wrong with knowing destiny." "What does your highness mean?" Qing Ning asked in confusion. "Do you still remember what the moon goddess said about Tianqi in the knowing destiny state?" The female Chang asked. "What appears to be an ordinary cultivation body of the extreme cold attribute actually possesses a shocking amount of power that shouldn't be possessed. Even the rising sun tiger god's divine sun flames cannot suppress it," Qing Ning replied. "Have you ever wondered why that is?" Female Chang asked again. Qing Ning frowned. After a while, she looked at Ning Chen in disbelief and said, "Your highness means that Ning Chen's physique is unusual." "Chaos water body." Nu Chang said in a low voice, "The reason why the heaven awakened showed an ordinary extreme cold attribute is perhaps because the primal chaos is all-encompassing, but it is also difficult to distinguish. Even if knowing destiny is a body of chaotic water, what does the other 2 materials have to do with it?" Mu Qianshang said. However, just as the words left his mouth, his expression changed. "Could it be the immortal god tree?" "Looks like you've guessed it too." Nu Chang said solemnly, "If the wood of primal chaos really exists in this world, then it is most likely the only undying god tree in the world." "What about the flame of chaos?" Luo Xingchen asked. Although he possesses the fire phoenix physique, the phoenix flame and the flame of chaos are definitely not the same thing. He has more than just phoenix fire. Nu Chang said seriously, "He has cultivated the 9 underworlds battle technique of the Sky Devil Imperial family, and his body is covered in demonic flames. His main body has also cultivated the immortal spirit body with the help of the immortal god tree, and he can activate the immortal flame, phoenix flame, devil flame, and immortal flame. Even if it's not as good as the flame of chaos, it's definitely very close. If that's the case, as long as we find the soil of chaos, the key to repairing the heavenly pillar lies with Ji Ming." Mu Qianshang said seriously, "Are we going to let Ji Ming sacrifice himself for the peace of the human world again? If that's the case, I'd rather the human world be destroyed just like that. We can't let Ji Ming sacrifice himself for the human world again." "Probably not." Qing Ning shook her head and said, "He's different this time. Now, Ning Chen's strength has already exceeded our imagination." Demonic Wheel C, Burial Sky Impasse. Taiyuan, the human world supremacies walked out from one impasse after another. They carried huge floating islands in their hands and flew towards the Ziwei galaxy. One after another, the floating islands were larger than mountains. However, within the floating islands, there was only a small amount of chaos. In the sky above the immortal domain, the human world supremacies rushed back with countless floating islands, waiting for orders. After many days of preparation, the mending of the heavens was imminent. In the sky above the immortal domain, Ning Chen walked to the front of the crowd and said, "Let's go." At his command, The supremacies obeyed and flew towards the end of the heaven realm and the human world with floating islands in their hands. Behind them, Fan Lingyue, Qing Ning, and the others followed, quietly waiting for the result of the mending of the heavens. At the end of the world, in front of the collapsed sky pillar, everyone stopped. At the front, Ning Chen stood quietly, looking at the collapsed sky pillar, and said calmly, "All of you, step back." As soon as he finished speaking, Ning Chen raised his hands, and his divine might shook the world. 3 figures appeared at the same time, a phoenix, a demon, and an immortal. Waves of fire swept across and merged into one. In an instant, an extremely terrifying flame of destruction appeared in the void. It was a transparent color, and it swallowed thousands of floating islands. Under the floating islands, the human world's supremacies immediately retreated, not daring to be affected by this terrifying flame. The flame of destruction devoured the heavens and the earth. Thousands of floating islands melted at a speed visible to the naked eye, burned to ashes by the flame of destruction. And in the center of the flame of destruction, a handful of yellow earth appeared. It looked no different from ordinary yellow earth, but it had an extremely heavy pressure. Ha! With a deep shout, Ning Chen activated the flame of destruction with both hands, burning the chaotic earth to refine the sky-mending stone. In the powerful flame of destruction, the chaotic earth gradually melted, turning into crimson lava. Ning Chen raised his hand, and the moment he touched the lava quickly froze and condensed into a pillar. And in the sky pillar formed by the lava, powerful vitality filled the air. The immortal divine tree's origin power merged with the sky-mending stone, and it began to grow rapidly. For every 10 feet the sky pillar grew, the distance between the human world and the heaven realm would increase by 10 feet. The sky pillar supported the collapsing sky, slowing down the speed of the world's collapse. The immortal divine tree's powerful vitality was almost endless. The sky pillar continued to grow, and in the blink of an eye, it had recovered 1/10 of its original size. In front of the sky pillar, Ning Chen stood in the air, and his aura was rapidly depleted. However, even though his body was severely damaged, the pressure on Ning Chen's body was getting stronger and stronger. The Chaos Divine item contained the will of creation, and Ning Chen, who was using all his strength to mend the sky, temporarily loosened the barrier of his realm. Behind the supremacies, Fan Lingyue looked at the scene in front of him, and his eyes narrowed slightly. He was only half a step away from entering the legendary realm. However, no one knew when he would be able to take this step. The sky pillar grew at a rapid pace. As time passed, Ning Chen's vitality was almost exhausted, but the brilliance in his eyes grew brighter and brighter. His state of mind was clear, and he was about to prove the Great Way. Behind Ning Chen, a huge bridge of the Great Way appeared. It was illusory and unpredictable, and had yet to solidify. Half a step away from proving the Great Way, and crossing the barrier between a mortal and a saint, was never an easy thing. It seemed to be half a step away, but in fact, it was as far as the sky. In 1,000 days, the sky pillar grew tens of thousands of miles. With the nourishment of the chaotic water, the wood of chaos grew faster and faster. It's my turn. At this time, Fan Lingyue stepped forward, raised his hand, and grabbed the mountains of the 6th heaven to fill the crack in the sky that spanned tens of thousands of miles in the starry sky. Chapter 1588. At the end of the mortal realm and immortal realm, knowing destiny and Fan Lingyue worked together to mend the sky. With the chaotic divine soil as the foundation, the undying divine tree as the source, the chaotic water as the quenching, and the chaotic fire as the refinement, knowing destiny displayed power comparable to the Genesis tier. The 4 types of chaotic power gathered and reconstructed the heavenly pillar. The heavenly pillar reappeared. Fan Lingyue made a move and refined the mountains and rivers of the 6 heavens realm, repairing the crack in the sky. It was a shocking scene. Heaven and earth shook. In the mortal realm, because the two worked together to mend the sky, endless vitality began to spread, and the laws of heaven began to be reborn. In the various galaxies, the most primitive vitality appeared in the lifeless planets. Although it was still far from producing humans, the signs of life had appeared. Everything that followed was only a matter of time. In front of the heavenly pillar, the venerables of the mortal realm watched the two men the sky with joy on their faces. The mortal realm could finally see light again. 1,000 years ago, the great calamity and dark disaster of the mortal realm made people despair. Now, heaven and earth were repaired, and everything was finally back on track. In the extreme north of the inner realm, in the heavenly music pavilion, the soundtrack finally began to move again. The sound of the great Tao reverberated through the entire inner realm. In front of the soundtrack, the heavenly music pavilion master looked into the distance with a gratified expression. The young man who walked out of the inner realm was now the hope of the entire mortal realm. In the southern border of the immortal realm, in the western Buddhist realm, the rising sun demon god and the demon venerable looked at the end of the world with complicated expressions in their eyes. He had already surpassed them and become the savior of the three realms. High priest, thank you. In front of the rising sun divine palace, the moon goddess spoke softly. On the side, the rising sun demon god quietly looked at the end of the immortal realm and the mortal realm. After a long time, he said calmly, "He may become the first Genesis tier of the mortal realm." This was something that even the venerable of the celestial realm couldn't do. Although the venerable of the celestial realm had absolute battle prowess and created the celestial realm, the venerable of the celestial realm hadn't truly stepped into the Genesis tier. No one knew whether it was on purpose or not, but he didn't take this final step until the venerable of the celestial realm became the lord of the eastern celestial realm. At the end of the heavens realm, the pillar was reconstructed, and the heavens and the cracks in the sky were repaired. Ning Chen and Fan Lingyuez were almost exhausted. Unexpectedly, at this moment, demonic chi surged wildly between heaven and earth, and the demonic might shook everyone's hearts. Under everyone's shocked gazes, a gigantic demonic figure appeared in front of the heavenly pillar. It was 1,000,000 zhang tall, and it seemed to be indomitable. Human, long time no see. When the heavenly demon appeared, the pressure of the imperial heavenly demon filled the air, shocking everyone. Xian Luo. In the sky, Ning Chen looked at the heavenly demon that appeared in front of him and said coldly, "We've waited for you for 1,000 years, and you've finally returned." Xian Luo raised his hand and a giant demonic hand pressed down. His terrifying aura covered the sky. He was at the peak of the undying Lord realm. Below, Ning Chen raised his hand and blocked the demonic might with his palm. The two most powerful individuals in the world exchanged blows. Immediately, demonic might attacked the heavens, frightening even gods and ghosts. After mending the sky, Ning Chen, who had exhausted all of his energy, was hit by the demonic power and took half a step back. A streak of blood slid down, dyeing her white clothes red. It was now dazzling. "Master!" Knowing destiny. When Yin-Er and the others saw this, they came back to their senses and immediately rushed forward. "This is between me and Xian Luo. Don't interfere." Ning Chen stopped everyone from going forward. Demonic flames rose from his body and began to burn the remaining blood qi. "Today, you and I will end all our grudges." As soon as he finished speaking, Ning Chen withdrew the power of his original body and the phoenix body. He released all of his demonic might and used the demonic power to control the demon. With the demonic body in control, Ning Chen's eyes turned black instantly. There was no longer any white in his eyes. "The world here has just been repaired. It can't withstand our battle. Let's go somewhere else," Ning Chen said coldly. "Okay," Xian Luo replied. The two then left and rushed toward the void world at the end of the world. The monstrous demonic might went far away. The venerables in the human world couldn't hide their worry, but because of knowing destiny's instructions, they didn't follow. "Don't worry. If he died so easily, he wouldn't be the knowing destiny Marquis," Fan Lingyue said lightly. He closed his eyes and began to regulate his breathing. At the end of the world, in the void world, two giant heavenly demons faced each other. After a while, an extreme battle broke out. It was a battle between the royal heavenly demons. Both of them had the chaotic demonic essence, and their power came from one. The ultimate battle shook the sky, and the void world shook. An earth-shattering battle took place. No one saw it, but a terrifying demonic power spread out from the void world, affecting the entire human world. In the star region closest to the void world, many dried-up stars were directly destroyed and turned into nothingness. In front of the sky pillar, the demonic might spread. Fan Lingyue opened his eyes briefly and protected the sky pillar that had just been repaired. Gradually, the fluctuations in the void world became smaller and smaller. 100 days later, it completely disappeared. The venerables in the human world looked more and more worried, afraid that something would happen to Knowing Destiny. Another 10 days later, Knowing Destiny dragged his tired body back. He was covered in blood and obviously suffered heavy injuries. In front of the venerables, saw Knowing Destiny returning. She cried tears of joy and immediately flew forward. "I'm fine," Ningchen said tiredly. Seeing Qing Ning behind Inu, he said softly, "I've made you worry." "It's good that you're fine," Qing Ning said softly. "What about Xian Luo? Is he dead?" Mu Qianshang asked, puzzled. Ningchen shook his head lightly. Looking back at the void world at the end of the world, a strange look flashed across his eyes. Xian Luo's power was already close to the Genesis tier. It seemed that the fall of the Nether King was a rare opportunity for the demons. In the void world, a huge demonic figure lay horizontally in the void. He was covered in blood and abnormally weak. However, the vitality of the demonic figure could be clearly felt. After a great battle, Xian Luo was heavily injured and on the verge of death, but he still survived. Knowing Destiny didn't kill this enemy who had been pestering him for half his life and let him live. After living for so long, if there were no enemies left, it was also a kind of sorrow. In front of the sky pillar, Fan Lingyue looked at Knowing Destiny who had returned. He didn't ask much and said calmly, "Heal your injuries first." Ningchen nodded. He sat cross-legged in front of the sky pillar. His 3 bodies appeared at the same time and he closed his eyes to rest. Phoenix, Demon, and Celestial. Around the 3 bodies, 3 different types of power spread, resonating with each other and converging into a bridge. They were only 1 step away from truly solidifying. The strongest cultivator in the mortal world who was closest to the Genesis tier had touched the barrier of the Genesis tier and was only waiting for the final opportunity to achieve Tao. And in the last 3 heavenly realms, holy light shone. In front of the heavenly gate, Mo Master, White Lotus Saint, and Golden Light Saint returned. They reached out to open the heavenly gate and returned to the above heavens. Behind the 3 of them, Darkness Master looked at the heavenly gate that opened in front of him. A strange look flashed across his face. Was this the heavenly gate? Legend had it that behind the heavenly gate was the true heaven realm, the above heavens. The heavenly gate opened. The 4 of them walked in and disappeared. Chapter 1589. At the end of the human realm, the heavenly pillar was rebuilt. The collapsed world began to recover, and the human realm regained its light. In front of the heavenly pillar, the Knowing Destiny 3 bodies sat cross-legged. Astonishing power filled the air, and they were already infinitely close to the legendary Genesis realm. The existence closest to the Genesis Saint in the human realm had experienced 100 reincarnations and was about to take this crucial step. In front, Fan Lingyue in a light blue dress stood quietly. She had also experienced reincarnation after reincarnation, and her cultivation was only half a step away from the Genesis realm. For 1,000 days, Ningchen used the power of the heavenly pillar to heal his injured body, and his cultivation grew stronger. After recovering, the human realm venerables returned to the celestial realm and began to rebuild the human realm. After experiencing this great calamity, more than 90% of the human realm had collapsed. The only relatively intact Z-Way star field became the key to restoring the human realm. The human realm venerables moved from Z-Way star to the mountains, rivers, and forests to rebuild the collapsed planets. In front of the celestial palace in the celestial realm, Ningchen stood and looked at the human realm in the distance. His eyes were as calm as water, and no ripples could be seen in them. "Greetings, venerable celestial." A human realm venerable walked over and bowed respectfully. "The all-heaven star field has begun to be rebuilt. However, although many planets have been rebuilt, it's still difficult to restore their vitality." "I know. You've worked hard these days. You may leave first," Ningchen said calmly. The human realm venerable bowed respectfully, then got up and left. 10 days later, above the all-heaven star field, a plain-clothed figure walked over, his white hair fluttering in the wind. "Senior Immortal, I want 10 stalks of great medicine." The small gourd extended 2 white and tender hands and bargained. A smile appeared on Ningchen's face as he replied softly. The small gourd grinned in satisfaction and foolishly smiled. In front of a withered planet in the all-heaven star field, Ningchen walked over. He raised his hand and lightly tapped. Instantly, a rain fell from the sky. In the blink of an eye, the withered trees on the planet that had lost all vitality were revived. Borrowing the power of the small gourd, Ningchen displayed astonishing ability. Wherever the rain fell, spring would be everywhere. One planet after another, life was restored at a speed visible to the naked eye. Ningchen traveled all over the all-heaven star field to contribute his last strength to the human realm. He had said that he would leave a pure land for them. Since he had said so, he would do it. In the immortal region, Fan Lingyue stood quietly as he looked at the distant all-heaven star field, quietly waiting for knowing destiny to finish his final task. After the mortal realm was rebuilt one after another, Ningchen would step in to help the various star regions recover their vitality. The long process lasted for 1,000 years. Finally, the mortal realm was restored to its pre-destruction state. The celestial lords of the mortal realm sent the humans they had taken away back to the major planets of life one after another, waiting for the mortal realm to regain its prosperity. In 1,000 years, many celestial venerables in the human world had entered the monarch realm. In this era where the rules of the Great Path were incomplete, the monarchs emerged one after another. Vaguely, the glory of the Archean era was reappearing. After the human realm was rebuilt, Ningchen left the immortal realm to search for the Yama king of the underworld. In the span of 100 years, Ningchen had traveled to every corner of the world, all for the sake of borrowing the power of the Yama kings of the underworld to find Xian Yu's incomplete soul. However, Ningchen had been searching for 100 years. He had searched the entire human world and the sixth heaven, but he still could not find the whereabouts of the Yama king of the underworld. It was as if they had disappeared into thin air. The immortal corpses that had been wandering the mortal world for tens of thousands of years had completely disappeared, never to appear again. 100 years later, Ningchen returned to the celestial realm and went into seclusion. This seclusion was unusually long. For 10,000 years, no one had seen the traces of the knowing destiny cultivator. After 10,000 years, the world had changed. In the mortal realm, all the major star regions had almost recovered their prosperity before the great calamity. In the immortal realm, most of the celestial lords of the mortal realm had left to search for their own opportunities. Only Qing Ning was still waiting. Just like before, she waited quietly. Inside the immortal palace, the origin of chaos filled the air. Flames, cold qi, and demonic qi surged and mixed with each other. Behind Ningchen, the scene of creation appeared. In the primordial world of chaos, tens of thousands of lightning bolts pierced through the silent void. In the primordial world, scrolls of heavenly books appeared and flew to different parts of the world. 10,000 years had passed. Ningchen woke up from his seclusion. He opened his eyes and walked out of the immortal palace. The surging origin of chaos was hard to suppress. Ningchen, who was on the verge of breaking through, had his true essence in the most unstable state. His power was terrifying. Outside the immortal palace, Qing Ning, who had been waiting for 10,000 years, was hit by this power. She took a few steps back. Ningchen. 10 steps away, Qing Ning stopped and looked at knowing destiny, who was surrounded by the origin of chaos. She was shocked. "Sister Qing Ning, let's go," Ningchen said softly. Qing Ning didn't ask where they were going. She just nodded. In this life she only had him left. Wherever he went she would follow. Not far away, Fan Lingyue also walked out. He looked at Ning Chen in front of the immortal palace. A strange look flashed in his eyes. It seemed that he was about to take that step. "Let's go," Ning Chen said calmly. Then he took Qing Ning and walked toward the starry sky. Fan Lingyue followed and walked toward the sky together. Above the mortal realm, there were 9 heavens. The 6 heavens were connected to the mortal realm. Beyond the mortal realm and the 6 heavens, there was the legendary above heaven. However, since ancient times, very few people could reach the last 3 heavens. The biggest reason was that there was a gate of heaven outside above heaven that separated the 3 realms from above heaven. In the starry sky, 2 blazing lights flashed past and rushed toward the 6 heavens. At the end of the 3 realms, time and space gradually ceased to exist. Ning Chen and Fan Lingyue walked out and looked at the sky. They didn't stop and continued to rush toward above heaven. After an unknown number of days and nights, an ancient and majestic stone gate appeared at the end of the void, blocking their path. "We're here." The 2 stopped. Ning Chen stopped and looked at the ancient stone gate in front of him. "Is this the gate of heaven?" Fan Lingyue narrowed his eyes and said, "Behind this gate should be the legendary above heaven, which is the world where the saints of the great path live. The truth we are looking for might be there." Ning Chen raised his hand. The chaotic divine flames surged and crashed toward the gate of heaven. With a boom, the chaotic divine flames hit the gate of heaven. Suddenly, a huge vibration sounded and shook the heaven and earth. Even the gate of heaven couldn't bear the power close to the Genesis tier. A small gap appeared between the 2 huge stone gates. The aura of the world behind the gate of heaven spread out. It was so ancient and shocking. The gate of heaven was about to open. Ning Chen's left hand surged with chaotic demonic energy. The 9 underworlds battle technique was pushed to the limit, and a 10-fold attack crashed into the gate of heaven. In an instant, the gate of heaven that withstood the powerful attack opened with a rumble. After countless years, the above heaven reappeared. Ning Chen, Qing Ning, and Fan Lingyue walked in and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Chapter 1590. Above heavens, the 7th heaven of the 9 heavens realm. The gate of heaven opened, and Ji Ming, Fan Lingyue, and Qing Ning entered above heavens. The vast and boundless world was surrounded by clouds and mist. It was like a fairyland that transcended the mortal world. There were almost no ordinary people in above heavens. All the creatures were abnormally powerful. 4th and even 5th realm existences were not rare. However, only the saints of the Great Path truly dominated this world. They were unknown and invisible. The rules of the Great Path existed in every corner of the world, and the saints of the Great Path were the incarnations of the Great Path. They were high above and extremely powerful. "He's here." Just as knowing destiny arrived at above heavens, Lord Mo opened his eyes and spoke in a divine palace shrouded in rainbow-colored light. "The disciple you took in the mortal world is really impressive." Beside him, White Lotus Saint, who was a guest in the divine palace, said lightly, "I'm looking forward to seeing what the reincarnation of the immortal realm supreme can do," Lord Mo said with a smile. In the east of above heavens, in a sacred place surrounded by floating clouds, Ji Ming and the other 2 felt an unusually powerful aura as soon as they arrived. The will of heaven and earth permeated the entire world. The Great Path gave birth to intelligence and incarnations. It was the source of the great calamity of heaven and earth. The Great Path was the rules. When the rules had a subjective will, how could heaven and earth be balanced? Before, with the suppression of the Nether King, the saints of the Great Path could only crawl and did not dare to make any other moves. Now that the Nether King had fallen, no one in the world could keep the saints in check. When Ning Chen and Fan Lingyue saw the 3 saints of the Great Path appear in the mortal world, they understood where the source of the great calamity of heaven and earth was. The will of the saints determined the survival of the mortal world. Such a thing was absurd and ironic. Therefore, Ning Chen and Fan Lingyue came to above heavens. The mortal world could no longer withstand the next great calamity. They came here for only one purpose, to kill the saints. If they could kill all the saints in above heavens and let the great path return to its original state, the rise and fall of the mortal world would no longer be controlled by anyone. In the east of the seventh heaven, a middle-aged man in blue opened his eyes and looked into the distance with a cold expression. This killing intent was disgusting. "Thank you for accompanying me to this place," Ning said softly. "Thanks are unnecessary." Fan Lingyue looked into the distance and said calmly, "You know my lifelong wish. For the prosperity of the human world, I won't hesitate even if I have to destroy the entire 9 heavens, let alone slaughter all the saints. Those below the saint realm are all ants. I didn't understand it in the past, but I do now." Ningchen felt the pressure between heaven and earth and said with a cold expression, "I don't like the feeling of my fate being controlled by others." "Then we'll kill everyone who controls our fate," Fan Lingyue said calmly. "As you wish." Ningchen replied calmly, "From today onwards, we will slowly regain our dignity from being toyed with by above heavens. Ants, you'll always be ants. How dare you act rashly against the heavens?" At this moment, ripples appeared in the sky. Dense heaven and earth's spiritual chi filled the air. Raging waves appeared in the sky. A middle-aged man in blue robes walked out from the raging waves. His aura was so powerful that it was shocking. The moment the middle-aged man appeared, a bridge of the great path manifested in the void. A true saint of the great path, with the great path as his body, controlled the source of all water in the world. The moment the Clearwater Saint appeared, Ning Chen's body suddenly sank. Even standing was difficult for him. The physique of the chaotic water was restricted by the great path of water. Below the saint realm, no matter how strong a martial arts expert was, he was just a slightly stronger ant. "Sister Qing Ning, step back a little," Ning Chen said softly as he looked at the saint of the great path in front of him. "Be careful." Qing Ning just reminded him and then left the battle without saying anything else. The battle was about to begin. Sword will surged around Ning Chen, and 4 immortal swords appeared. The 4 immortal slaying swords appeared, and their ferocious power shook the mortal world. With Ning Chen as the center, the sword pressure roared and surged. After 10,000 years of hard work, he had achieved great success in the sword Dao. In the rear, Fan Lingyue didn't make a move. Instead, she chose to watch the battle. Neither she nor Ning Chen had fought with a saint of the great path before. There were too many unknowns in this battle. However, no matter how many unknowns there were, they couldn't leave their fates in the hands of others. In the void, the Clearwater Saint raised her hand, and the sky full of raging waves pressed down. The extremely rich source of water sealed the space. Around Ning Chen, the sword lights were quickly destroyed by the impact of the source of water. In the face of the great path, all the power seemed so weak. In the blink of an eye, Ning Chen's body turned red. The 4 immortal swords were suppressed by the great path law, and they also cried out violently. Outside the endless space, Mo Zhu walked out of the 7-colored divine palace and looked into the distance. His weathered eyes flashed with light. The Clearwater Saint was the ruler of the East. She controlled the source of water between heaven and earth. The most powerful thing about her was her endless vitality. Water was the source of life, and the Clearwater Saint was an immortal existence. In the east of the above heaven, Ning Chen also felt the power of the Clearwater Saint. With a deep roar, the divine flames around him soared into the sky. The flames burned the sky and boiled the sea. The 3 powers of Phoenix, Demon, and God fused together and burned the water between heaven and earth, trying to cut off the source of the Clearwater Saint's power. Around Ning Chen, the 4 immortal swords ignited with different flames. On Ning Chen's origin sword, the celestial slashing sword, there was a raging blood flame. Water and fire were incompatible. After a moment of stalemate, Ning Chen moved and instantly appeared in front of the Clearwater Saint. The moment he held his sword, he slashed it. Boom! In front of the Clearwater Saint, the light of water condensed into a sky screen and blocked the immortal sword. In the blink of an eye, the Clearwater Saint raised her hand and pressed it on the sword in Ning Chen's hand. Suddenly, the source of water exploded. Ning Chen's body flew out and crashed into the mountain peak in the distance. The collapsed immortal mountain and debris flew everywhere. Ning Chen's figure swept out and looked at the saint of the great path in front of him. His expression became more and more serious. What amazing power, what amazing source of the great path. The will of the limitless sword will and the limitless sword will. In the blink of an eye, Ning Chen's figure appeared in front of the Clearwater Saint. He held his sword and slashed the saint of the great path again. With a boom, the Clearwater Saint blocked the immortal slaying sword with her fingers. Unexpectedly, the immortal slaying sword appeared in Ning Chen's hand. The incomparably powerful sword broke the sea and split the flood. The immortal slaying sword cut through the stormy waves and touched the body of the saint of the great path. With a sizzling sound, a smear of vermilion splashed out. In shock, the Clearwater Saint was injured for the first time. "You're just a mere ant, yet you're able to hurt me." The Clearwater Saint came back to her senses. Her face was full of murderous intent. The source of the great path around her spread, and an extremely cold aura froze heaven and earth. In Ning Chen's hand, frost condensed on the immortal slaying sword and spread rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. It wanted to freeze the blasphemer. With murderous intent, the flames of destruction around Ning Chen rose again. After fusing 3 types of flames, the power was terrifying and shocking. As the water and fire collided, the world changed. Ning Chen reached out and grabbed the Clearwater Saint's clothes. The flames of destruction spread and turned into a huge fire phoenix, carrying the 2 of them toward the mountain peak in the distance. Chapter 1591. High up in the sky, the phoenix's cry shook the world. A single sword slashed through the 9 heavens. It was a shocking battle. The phoenix defied the heavens and fought fiercely against a saint of the great path. Layer after layer of collapsed mountains and rivers symbolized the intensity of the battle. A battle on the level of Genesis tier had already surpassed the scope of battles in the mortal realm. This was Ning Chen's first time facing a saint of the great path, so he went all out, not giving his opponent a chance to counterattack. The phoenix cry was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of mountains were flattened by the sword light. In the midst of the battle, Clearwater Saint's figure flew out. In the blink of an eye, the phoenix arrived once again. The sky-severing sword cut through the void and fell toward the saint of the great path in front of him. The mountains and rivers collapsed and the river split open. The Clearwater Saint's figure fell and smashed out a huge crater. Outside the battle, Fan Lingyue and Qing Ning watched the battle quietly, but their expressions grew more and more solemn. Although Ning Chen's attacks were fierce, Clearwater Saint's aura did not weaken at all. Were saints of the great path really immortal? In the battle, phoenix flames burned the sky and blotted out the sun, and the chaotic divine flames continued to spread, burning all the water vapor in the world. Ning Chen was only a hair's breadth away from advancing to the Genesis tier. With the support of the celestial slaying 4 swords, his battle prowess had already surpassed that of a monarch tier and reached the half-saint tier. However, the difference of a single word was like the difference between heaven and earth. In an incomparable battle, saints would find it difficult to injure, and neither would they die or perish. The power of the 4 immortal slaying swords was earth-shattering. They cut through the void again, and even cut through the rules around the saints. However, the moment they touched the saints of the great path, even time and space seemed to be distorted, and it was difficult to really hurt the saints. Is this all you can do? After 10 moves, the Clearwater Saint suddenly stopped and raised her hand to block the immortal extermination sword. Specks of vermilion dyed the tip of the sword red. However, the Clearwater Saint's injuries recovered in an instant and she was almost indestructible. "It's my turn now." The Clearwater Saint slapped out with her palm, causing raging waves to sweep out, forcing her opponent to retreat. With a shocking palm strike, Ning Chen's figure was sent flying 100 miles away. The wings on his back spread out, and he managed to stop himself from retreating. In the blink of an eye, Clearwater Saint's figure disappeared in front of him. When she reappeared, she was already in front of him. The Clearwater Saint unleashed her killing intent. thousands of ice divine spears appeared and pierced towards the humans in front of her. Skybreaker! Ning Chen held his sword horizontally. His sword intent was pushed to the limit, and he swung his sword to cut through space and time. Rumbling sounds resounded throughout the seventh layer of heaven. The sword chi and the icy divine spear collided with each other, and the heavens and earth were covered in a vast expanse. Jingshan! After one sword strike, another one rose. Ning Chen put his fingers together and his sword moved the world. The sword light was dazzling as it slashed down. With a loud boom, the sword radiance broke through the great Tao and approached the clear water saint. He had cultivated the sword for 10,000 years, and today he was finally facing a true god. As the sword radiance neared her, waves rippled in front of her. The sword radiance broke through the rules of the great Tao and started to distort. In the blink of an eye, their gazes met. Ning Chen's left hand brought out a second immortal sword, which flew out and sliced through the man's throat. With a clang, the Clearwater Saint blocked the sword with her fingers and struck out with her palm, counterattacking strongly. Ning Chen was filled with murderous intent. He turned around and dashed behind the Saint of the Great Path at lightning speed. The immortal slaying sword streaked across with unparalleled sharpness. A piece of the void was directly sliced apart. The sword will spread out, destroying the heaven and earth. The Clearwater Saint turned around and raised her hand to block the sword. She looked at the human in front of her with a serious expression. He seemed to have underestimated this human. Heaven's Inquisition! Ning Chen shouted, breaking through the limit. Above the 9 heavens, auspicious clouds filled the air. Within the clouds, silver light shone brightly. A shocking sword radiance descended from the sky, slashing toward the Saint of the Great Path below. As soon as the sword of Heaven's Inquisition appeared, the entire eastern world shook. Silver light spread out, and the sword chi reached the divine realm. The earth-shattering sword chi continued to slash toward the Saint of the Great Path. In the sky, the sword of Heaven's Inquisition slashed down with destructive power, breaking through layer after layer of obstacles. The Clearwater Saint looked at the sword radiance descending from the sky, and her face darkened completely. At this moment, Ning Chen's body was surrounded by silver light. He stood in the divine realm and touched the realm of the gods. Boom! In an instant, the power of the sword of Heaven's Inquisition multiplied and broke through the rules around the Saint of the Great Path. With a muffled groan, the sword will penetrated her body. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of the Clearwater Saint's mouth. How dare you! With her sacred body injured, the Clearwater Saint's murderous intent surged. She directly smashed the sword will in the sky with her palm. Ugh! With a muffled groan, Ning Chen's white clothes were dyed red. His figure flew out like a meteor and crashed into 10 mountains. Under the rain of stones, the phoenix fire rose and the phoenix soared into the sky. It was also immortal and indestructible, and its injuries healed rapidly. The immortal bird lives up to its name. The Clearwater Saint looked at the phoenix in the phoenix fire in front of her and said coldly, "However, this is not the first time I have killed the immortal bird." As soon as she finished speaking, the Clearwater Saint's figure disappeared and flew 100 miles away. In the sky full of phoenix fire, waves surged. The Clearwater Saint reached out to grab the phoenix's wings, wanting to destroy them. Immortal slaying! Ning Chen's murderous intent was approaching. The wings behind his back retracted, and the immortal sword turned around, shining with a sharp light. The Clearwater Saint frowned. She blocked the sword with her immortal and indestructible body and reached out to grab the phoenix's wings. At the same time, the moment the Clearwater Saint grabbed the phoenix's wings, Ning Chen's left hand grabbed her arm. Swoosh! The sword slashed down, and blood splattered all over the sky. The phoenix's wings fell, and one of them was torn off. The phoenix's wings were broken, and the saint's arm was cut off. It was a shocking scene. The Clearwater Saint's left arm was cut off by the immortal slaying sword, and blood splattered all over the void. Both of them were injured. The phoenix fire around Ning Chen quickly retracted, and the demonic flame soared into the sky. The immortal slaying sword was in his hand, and the sword fell, breaking through the void. There was a loud rumble, and the world dimmed. The Clearwater Saint focused and stepped out 100 feet. Her severed arm was regenerated, and she recovered instantly. Heavy waterfall. The saint raised his hand, and the great Tao roared. The entire void was swept by waves and fell down. Flood splitting. Ning Chen waved his sword, and the sword light slashed, splitting the waves. It was an intense battle, and it was hard to determine the winner. Outside the battle, Fan Lingyue calmly watched the battle in front of her, looking for a way to kill the saint. She and Ning Chen had never come into contact with the saint of the Great Tao before, so they did not know how to kill him. However, if they did not kill the saint, the human world would not be able to achieve true peace. The saint must not exist in this world. Perhaps, only by knowing the reason why the Nether King died can we find a way to kill the saint. Qing Ning looked at the battle in front of her and said seriously. Fan Lingyue heard this, and a strange look flashed across her eyes. She said, Ning Chen, lend me the heavenly book. In the battle, Ning Chen heard her and waved his sword to break the battle. Then, he flipped his left hand and called out the heavenly book of creation. The heavenly book flew past and turned into a stream of light, rushing out of the battle. Fan Lingyue looked at the heavenly book flying towards her, and her figure blurred, disappearing into the heavenly book. Qing Ning, protect me. Understood. Qing Ning nodded and answered seriously. The next moment, the heavenly book of creation shone brightly. The heavenly book flipped, and the scroll of light reappeared. Chapter 1592. In the sky, demonic aura filled the sky. After the phoenix broke its wings, the demonic figure appeared. Its demonic aura shook the 9 heavens and 10 lands. The saint's severed arm recovered in the blink of an eye. Its aura was still shocking. Outside the battle, Fan Lingyue looked at the creation heavenly book in his hand. His figure disappeared into it. In the heavenly book world, chaos filled the air. Countless lightning bolts fell from the sky, showing the scene of the primal beginning world. Fan Lingyue stood quietly in the chaos world, watching the scene of creation. In the sky full of lightning, great Tao bridges appeared one after another. Heaven and earth were created, and the great Tao was born. 50 great Tao bridges shook the heavens and earth. The laws spread and stabilized the primal beginning world. However, just as heaven and earth were about to become complete, the entire primal beginning world suddenly started to self-destruct. The 50 great Tao bridges were too perfect, causing the primal beginning world to be unable to continue developing. The collapsing primal beginning world was full of disasters. Mountains and rivers collapsed, and rivers overturned. It was a nightmare for countless years. Disasters kept happening in the primal beginning world, and no vitality could be produced. A perfect great Tao was not a good thing for the primal beginning world. Instead, it became a disaster. A long time passed. In the world where heaven and earth were created, an incomparably holy figure appeared. The 12 wings of sin spread out behind him, covering the sky and the sun. His demonic aura was shocking. Saint and demon in one body. The Nether King appeared with the body of a demon. The Nether King, who was born with heaven and earth, looked at the world below and frowned. In the beginning, even the Nether King did not understand why the calamities kept happening. However, as time passed, the Nether King saw the source of the calamities. A perfect great Tao made heaven and earth lose the space to develop. Therefore, the primal beginning world kept collapsing. In the sky above the primal beginning world, 50 great Tao bridges floated up and down. At this time, the Nether King, who saw the reason for the world's collapse, raised his hand. Demonic aura surged, and a 6-foot-long demonic blade appeared. The frenzy of doomsday was threatening. The Nether King's weapon displayed the power to destroy heaven and earth. With a sword, the frenzy of doomsday slashed down. In the distance, a great Tao bridge was directly slashed open. The bridge collapsed, and the laws scattered. It was a shocking scene. The Nether King slashed the great Tao with a sword, creating a gap in the perfect great Tao. Suddenly, the collapsing absolute beginning gradually stabilized and obtained space to develop. All living things were gradually born. After such a long time, the first vitality appeared in the absolute beginning world. It came from the end of the sea and the land. On the wutong tree, the phoenix cried. Then the azure dragon, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise were born along with the development of heaven and earth. Later on, the human race, the demon race, the devil race, and the myriad races evolved one after another, entering the most prosperous primordial mythological era. In the sky above, the battle was fierce. The demonic might was shaking the divine might. The knowing destiny state cultivators fought against the saints of the great path, shaking the great path with their human bodies. Saints of the great path possessed unparalleled strength. They had no flaws or weaknesses. Every time they were injured, they could quickly recover. However, Ningchen, who had reached the half-saint realm, was also very strong. He was not at a disadvantage when facing a real saint of the great path. Ningchen's astonishing cultivation base and 10,000 years of martial arts knowledge had created an earth-shattering sword art. With the help of the 4 immortal slaying swords, he could even fight against a saint of the great path. In the void, the phoenix flame rose again amidst the monstrous demonic might. The phoenix's rapid regenerative ability quickly regenerated the torn wings. Ningchen's foundation was restored to its peak. On the 7th layer of heaven, several saints of the great path were watching the battle with solemn expressions. Even they did not expect that a human could fight with Clearwater's saint to such an extent. It seems that we have all underestimated this phoenix. In the 7-colored palace, Saint of Golden Light looked at the battle in the east and said coldly, "Over the years, 1 or 2 powerful ants will always appear." "It's not surprising," Saint of White Lotus said calmly. In the main hall, the master of the 7-colored palace, Lord Emo, looked at the chessboard in front of him and said, "When I took him as my disciple, it was because of his phoenix origin. But I didn't expect that today he has already exerted the power of the immortal bird to such an extent." The immortal bird born in the primordial world is indeed the existence closest to the great path. But even so, it's only close. Saint of White Lotus said lightly, "If you don't take this last step, you're just a relatively powerful ant." "White Lotus, don't underestimate the enemy." Saint of Golden Light said, "Have you forgotten the swordsman who came from the human world?" As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere in the palace became so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Saint of White Lotus was silent, and her expression became serious. 10,000 years ago, the swordsman who came from the human world to the above heavens was so powerful that he made them feel fear. That was the real threat of death, which had never happened in the endless years. Turning the sword into the great path, such an ability had already surpassed the scope of human beings. To some extent, the swordsman from the human world had also helped them a lot. If it weren't for him, they would still be restricted by the Lord of the Underworld and unable to act freely. While the 3 of them were talking, in the east, 2 figures were fighting back and forth. Ningchen and Saint of Clearwater flew out again and again, smashing the eastern world into ruins. However, their recovery ability was too strong, and they recovered in the blink of an eye. The battle reached its climax. Ningchen's body was burning with the chaotic flame. Standing in the divine realm, he attacked with 10 times the power. The earth-shattering sword directly cut off half of Saint of Clearwater's body. The chaotic flame spread, trying to destroy the saint's vitality. However, it only took an instant for Saint of Clearwater's body to recover, and all her injuries were healed. The saint of the great path counterattacked, and the bones in Ningchen's left shoulder were all shattered. Blood splattered, and it was extremely dazzling. "Ha!" In the void, Ningchen shouted. The phoenix flame, demonic flame, and immortal flame rose rapidly. His indestructible body quickly healed his injuries. Immediately, he turned into a heavenly sword and collided with the saint in front of him. Saint of Clearwater's expression darkened. She put her hands together and blocked the heavenly sword. A terrifying impact burst out. The corners of her mouth were red, and her chest was penetrated by the sword chi. However, the immortal and indestructible body of the saint was no longer afraid of any attack. Immortal bird, you are very powerful, but you still can't change the fate of death. Saint of Clear Water raised her hand and landed her palm on the phoenix form. Suddenly, Ning Chen's figure flew out, and the sky was filled with phoenix feathers. Force him to summon the bridge of the Great Path. That is his true body. Only by destroying the bridge of the Great Path can we kill him. Otherwise, his body will be reborn endlessly. At this moment, Fan Lingyue's voice came out from the heavenly book of creation, reminding her. In the void, 100 miles away, Ning Chen heard this. The blood-stained wings on his back shook, and he forcibly stopped his retreat. Fall of the Six Paths, thousands of demonic tribulations, Taishang forbidden sword. With a deep shout, the power of the sword shook the world. Between heaven and earth, beams of sword light shot up into the sky and turned into a black demonic phoenix. Immediately, the demonic phoenix became one with the sword and rushed toward the saint of the Great Path. Chapter 1593. In the above heavens, knowing destiny battled the saints. The fierce battle shook the 9 heavens. The strongest martial artist in the human world fought his way into the above heavens just to end the source of the endless calamity in the human world. The strength of a saint of the Great Path was earth-shattering. Their every move had the power to change the world. Coupled with their immortality, they had almost no weaknesses. In order to slay the saints, Fan Lingyue entered the heavenly book of creation to find a way to slay the saints. In the primordial world, the Nether King slashed the Great Path with his sword, leaving the possibility of development for the primordial world. The gods of destruction and creation were born with the world and had unusual feelings for this world. For the continuation of the world, they didn't hesitate to destroy the bridge of the Great Path with their own hands. In the battle, phoenix feathers fluttered and waves of blood filled the sky. The fierce battle was getting more and more intense. Ning Chen's body was surrounded by demonic energy and phoenix flames. He was like a divine sun, dazzling and eye-catching. In the flames that filled the sky, raging waves swept and water rippled. The Clear Water Saint's figure flashed, her body merged with the Great Path, and her combat power was monstrous. The opposition between water and fire had started since the primordial age of chaos. Water and fire were incompatible, and this was an unchanging law. Force out his Great Path bridge. Outside the battle, Fan Lingyue's voice came from the heavenly book of creation and reminded. Hearing this, Ning Chen fully unleashed his sword intent, and the grand forbidden sword appeared. The sword aura that could destroy the world was unleashed. Wherever the sword intent passed, everything was destroyed. The supreme sword intent shook the world with yin and yang. In the 7 heavens, all the gods and demons felt this shocking sword pressure, and they were shocked. What a powerful sword pressure! In the Rainbow Palace, the Golden Light Saint felt the powerful sword intent from the east and said with a serious expression. This sword pressure reminded him of that person, the stunning king of the sword. But in terms of attack power, this kid is not inferior to a saint of the Great Path. The White Lotus Saint said indifferently, however, the strength of a saint of the Great Path is not just limited to attack power. The will of a human has surpassed that of a god. I'm getting more and more interested in him. The Golden Light Saint said with a cold smile. Hasn't he always wanted to change this world since the primordial age? Mo Master looked at the anticipation in front of him and said as he placed the black chess piece in his hand. Unfortunately, he failed. The White Lotus Sage sneered. Even he himself has entered the cycle of reincarnation, no longer the same as before. Didn't he come back? Mo Zhu smiled and said, now, he has basically recovered his strength from back then and has begun to touch the domain of saints. During the most glorious period of the celestial realm, I could vaguely sense that his power was clearly capable of breaking through to the Genesis tier. However, for some reason he still hasn't taken that final step, the Golden Light Saint said calmly. Perhaps it's because he doesn't want to become people like us. Mo Clan Master's smiling face turned cold as he said, in the east, sword will soar into the sky. The sword of destruction tore through the air and slashed at the saint of the Great Path in front of him. The incomparably powerful sword force even destroyed space and time. Seeing this, Clearwater Sage's expression turned serious. Ha! With a deep shout, the Clearwater Saint once again raised her Saint Chi, causing a raging wave to sweep out and furiously block the supreme forbidden sword. Amidst the raging waves, tens of thousands of swords converged into one. The tens of thousands of swords converged into one, and their power multiplied. With the power to destroy the world, they were determined to kill the saint of the great path in front of them. The sword momentum was unstoppable, and the shocking attack was unstoppable. The Clearwater Saint took half a step back with a shocked expression. Not daring to be careless, the Clearwater Saint raised her Saint Chi to the limit, and the bridge of the great path rumbled out, manifesting between heaven and earth. When her true form appeared, the Clearwater Saint's aura rose rapidly, reaching the peak. With a loud bang, the supreme forbidden sword formed by the tens of thousands of swords collapsed. However, in the battle, the phoenix fire spread, and the fire waves rolled. It was actually a scene of burning the sky and boiling the sea. Nirvana. The phoenix bathed in fire and was reborn through nirvana. Since the beginning of time, the phoenix had never died. Instead, it went through nirvana again and again, just like the reincarnation of the mortal world, preserving the inheritance of life in another way. Amidst the burning phoenix fire, the huge phoenix wings behind Ningchen spread to the extreme, covering thousands of miles, covering the sky and the sun. Pushing his cultivation to the limit, the sword pressure roared and surged. Ningchen waved the immortal slaying sword in his hand, and a magnificent sword light appeared. The sword that shook heaven and earth swept past at an extremely fast speed with astonishing power. Even the saints felt threatened. As the sword light swept past, the Clearwater Saint's expression turned serious. She activated her Saint Chi, wanting to block the attack. She was shocked to see that the sword light passed by, and the target was not the saint's body. The Clearwater Saint was stunned, and then her expression suddenly changed. Not good. The saint turned around, and her figure flashed past, wanting to block the nirvana sword that passed by. However, it was already too late. The phoenix's extreme speed surpassed the limits of time and space, and it instantly swept to the great Tao bridge in the void. The sky shook violently. The sword slashed the great Tao, and the sword that condensed the full power of the knowing destiny state slashed the great Tao bridge. It was a shocking scene. The great Tao bridge that symbolized the source of water collapsed, and the entire world shook. In the Rainbow Palace, the two saints, Golden Light and White Lotus, were shocked. On the side, Mo Master's hand that was playing a piece also paused, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. He had surprised them again. At the same time, in the depths of the Rainbow Palace, the Lord of Darkness, who was in seclusion, opened his eyes. Black air filled his body, and his face was gloomy. He had chased them all the way here. In the Eastern world, the Nirvana sword slashed the Great Tao, and the Great Tao bridge collapsed, devouring its owner. The Clearwater Saint's body trembled violently, and fear appeared on her face. The King of Hell's third watch, reincarnation into Hell. At the end of the battle, the King of Hell took the life. Ning Chen's fairy slayer showed its ferocious power, and his sword opened the road to the underworld. Hell appeared, and the world of the Great Tao suddenly changed. Ning Chen turned into an Azura, and his demonic aura surged, and his eyes instantly turned black. The Great Tao bridge collapsed, and the situation of the battle changed rapidly. In Hell, demonic shadows flashed past, and killing intent was displayed. The Clearwater Saint suppressed the saint power that was dispersing around her, and turned around to block the fierce sword with her palm. Boom! It was a destructive blow. The aftermath swept wildly around the two of them, destroying everything in its path. Saint, how does it feel to be defeated by an ant in your eyes? In an instant, Ning Chen swung his sword and cut her throat. Blood splattered, and mist filled the sky. The Clearwater Saint's pupils constricted, and she could no longer see anything. Behind the saint, the collapsed Great Tao bridge kept falling, and the Great Tao rule that was born with heaven and earth was completely destroyed. At this moment, outside the battle, the heavenly book of creation shone brightly, and it stabilized the collapsed Great Tao Bridge. In a moment, Ning Chen's figure flashed, and he rushed to the front of the Great Tao Bridge. Ha! With a deep shout, Ning Chen's immortal core power surged, and the power of extreme coldness spread, swallowing the destroyed Great Tao Bridge. Behind him, Fan Lingyue, who was dressed in a light blue dress, walked over. She looked at the knowing destiny state in front of her, and said, "How is it?" "Very strong." Ning Chen said calmly, "He underestimated me after all. If we do it again, it won't be so smooth." "Smooth?" Fan Lingyue glanced at the man in front of her, who was covered in blood, and said calmly, "You'd better heal your injuries as soon as possible." Ning Chen nodded, and the phoenix fire rose around him again, and he began to heal his injuries. Not far away, Qing Ning walked over and said calmly, "Are there really 46 saints of this level?" "We don't know yet." Fan Lingyue looked into the distance and said seriously, "I hope not." Chapter 1594. In the eastern world of the seventh heaven, the death of the Clearwater Saint shook the entire world. The death of a saint was followed by the death of the Netherworld King. On the 49th day, Ning Chen's injuries were completely healed. After a fierce battle, his cultivation level increased again. After devouring the source of water, Ning Chen's body became even stronger. His every move revealed the truth of the Great Tao. The ruler of the eastern world died in battle. Without a leader, many people became restless. Although Ning Chen defeated the Clearwater Saint, he had not reached the Genesis tier. He could not really intimidate those monarch-level elites. In the 49th day, 7 monarch-level elites came one after another. They wanted to attack while Che Jiming was recuperating. However, Fan Lingyue, who was guarding Ning Chen, attacked. The sword of purification killed all the enemies. The 7 monarch-level elites were all defeated by the sword of purification. Fan Lingyue's ruthless style had never changed. For the sake of his goal, he did not care about the process. After the 49th day, after Ning Chen woke up, the entire eastern world quieted down. The eastern world calmed down. Ning Chen looked at the next saint of the Great Tao. The Firmament Saint, a saint who controlled the Tao of space. Even among the 49th Great Tao, he was an extremely powerful existence. Time and space had always been the most mysterious rules in the world. They were powerful and complicated. However, this battle did not last long. Ning Chen was defeated, and he was defeated miserably. Facing the Firmament Saint who controlled the Tao of space, Ning Chen was defeated in less than 100 moves. Even his phoenix wings were torn off. Fortunately, Fan Lingyue, who was outside, arrived in time and saved Ning Chen. Otherwise, Ning Chen would have died in the above heavens. After this battle, Ning Chen and the others disappeared for 700 years. No one knew about them. At the end of the eastern world, in the depths of the sea, waves rolled. At the bottom of the sea, phoenix flames surged. After controlling the source of water, Ning Chen, Fan Lingyue, and Qing Ning came to the bottom of the sea and hid their auras. The battle with the Firmament Saint showed them how terrifying a saint of the Great Tao was. Facing the Firmament Saint who controlled the Great Tao, even someone as strong as Ning Chen did not have much room to fight back. "How is it?" Fan Lingyue asked. He only asked 2 words as usual. "Very strong." Ning Chen, who was recuperating, opened his eyes and answered honestly. He had also mastered the forbidden underworld of space energy. However, compared to the Zhangqiong Saint, it was so weak. "I'll give you one more chance." "How confident are you?" Fan Lingyue continued asking. 10%, Ning Chen replied. 10%. Fan Lingyue murmured softly. 700 years, 10%. That's enough. 3 days later, Ning Chen and Fan Lingyue walked out from the bottom of the sea and headed to the Firmament Peak once again to challenge the Firmament Saint. It was an earth-shattering battle that caused the sky to lose its color. Ning Chen used all of his abilities and used all of his skills. For the first time, he came into contact with the Zhangqiong Saint, who controlled the Great Tao of space. However, Ning Chen was still defeated. This time, Ning Chen lost an arm. His chest also had a large hole blasted out by spatial rule, looking wretched to the extreme. However, relying on the phoenix's extreme speed and Fan Lingyue's help, Ningchen still managed to barely preserve his life. Under the Zhangqiong Saint's pursuit, the two of them fled all the way to the bottom of the ocean before they barely managed to escape. This time, Ningchen rested for 900 years and did not dare to step out from the bottom of the ocean. In the seven-colored palace, the White Lotus Saint, who had witnessed the two battles between Ningchen and the Zhangqiong Saint for more than 1,000 years, looked increasingly solemn. This phoenix's strength was growing too fast. Compared to the first time when he was unable to fight back against the Zhangqiong Saint, this time, he could already come into contact with the Zhangqiong Saint. It's been 900 years. His injuries are almost healed. The Golden Light Saint said calmly. This time, the Zhangqiong Saint won't give him a chance to leave alive, the White Lotus Saint said coldly. Not necessarily. In the main hall, Master Mo, who had been silent all this time, said with a smile, "This disciple of mine is much smarter than I thought." At this moment, a phoenix's cry came from the bottom of the sea. A fire phoenix soared into the sky and flew towards the Firmament Saint. In the sky, the Zhangqiong Saint opened his eyes. A murderous intent flashed across his eyes. It's finally time. The Zhangqiong Saint stood up and slammed his palm down from the sky. The destructive palm strike transcended the limits of space and landed directly on the fire phoenix that was soaring into the sky. However, at this moment, the space around the fire phoenix was distorted and the world came to a standstill. In an instant, the phoenix's figure soared into the sky and reached the Firmament Saint. In the next moment, the phoenix transformed into an immortal slaying sword amidst the flames in the sky. The deadly sword was so fast that it surpassed the limit of time and space. Even time began to flow backward. In the blink of an eye, the sword tip had already reached the Zhangqiong Saint. The moment the sword tip touched the Zhangqiong Saint disappeared and appeared behind Ji Ming. The phoenix's extreme speed is meaningless before the rules of space. The Zhangqiong Saint's palm landed on Ji Ming's back. There was a muffled groan as blood splattered and dyed the sky red. In the void, demonic chi and immortal core power surged as two figures walked out of thin air. "Got you!" The demonic body and the true body grabbed the Zhangqiong Saint's shoulders as the aura around them burned rapidly. In front of them, the phoenix that had taken the hit swung its sword in an attempt to kill the Zhangqiong Saint. The Zhangqiong Saint quickly retreated. However, his body was restrained and he was half a step slower. The blood was so glaring that it was the first time the Zhangqiong Saint was injured since the battle began. "How dare you!" The Zhangqiong Saint's eyes flashed with anger as his Taoist body was injured. He unleashed all his strength as he condensed Saint core power in his palms and pushed the demonic body away. At the same time, the phoenix swept past and the sword tip came at him again. "Back off!" The Zhangqiong Saint blocked the immortal sword with his fingers as his Saint core power vibrated and pushed the immortal sword back. When the immortal sword and the demonic body retreated, the immortal sword and the demonic body attacked again. The four immortal slaying swords are indeed worthy of their reputation. The Zhangqiong Saint blocked the immortal sword with his palms as his Saint core power surged. Outside the battle, Fan Lingyue, who was watching the battle for the third time, was looking for a flaw in the Zhangqiong Saint. She believed that there was no perfect power in the world. Even the great Tao of space could not be flawless. At this moment, Qing Ning stood above the sea area far away from the battle and said, "Space cannot restrain the will of humans." Outside the battle, Fan Lingyue's eyes narrowed. "Well, so that's how it is." Fan Lingyue closed her eyes and released her will. Suddenly, both inside and outside the battle were filled with white light. Wherever the will was, the Tao would be there. In the battle, Ning Chen was enlightened. He stopped and released all his sword intent. Wherever the will was, the sword would be there. Ugh! The sword light pierced through the Zhangqiong Saint's chest and blood splattered everywhere. Chapter 1595. Above the firmament, the sword broke through the firmament, and the saint was severely injured. The will of the sword transcended the limits of space. The limitless sword was also limitless. Blood splattered and dyed the firmament red. The saint was injured, and his immortal golden body was broken. The firmament saint's eyes burned with anger as his saint body was injured. He slammed his palm down, and the entire sky cracked. The space around Ningchen was frozen by the space rules. It was like a heaven and earth cage, making it difficult for him to escape. Ningchen stabbed down with the fairy-slaying sword in his hand, and a terrifying sword pressure spread out, forcefully breaking the heaven and earth cage. The phoenix fire spread, and Ningchen's figure disappeared instantly. He dashed 100 miles away, and the three swords moved at the same time. The limitless sword was unstoppable. The firmament saint took a step forward and dodged the first two sword radiances. Whoosh! The third sword radiance was unavoidable. It slashed across the saint's shoulder, and blood spurted out. The firmament saint's eyes burned with killing intent after being injured consecutively. He gathered all his power, and his saint vital energy rushed into the sky. The bridge of the great path that symbolized the space rules appeared, and the firmament saint's strength was pushed to the limit. In the firmament, the battle between the Genesis realm cultivators had reached its peak. 4 symbols divine seal, 3 light shadow bodies. The 3 swords rose again, and the sword radiances slashed toward the bridge of the great path. The firmament saint waved his hand and blocked the 3 sword radiances. The firmament saint had reached his limit. Ningchen looked at the bridge of the great path behind the saint, and his eyes narrowed slightly. If he wanted to kill a saint, he had to destroy the bridge of the great path. However, the firmament saint controlled the space rules, and his strength was not something the Clearwater saint could compare to. Ha! With a long shout, the knowing destiny 3 bodies released sword will, and the limitless sword was about to destroy the bridge of the great path. Under the great path, above the firmament, human, you have no chance of winning. The firmament saint raised his hand, and the space shook. Cracks appeared, sealing off all the paths ahead. He was one of the strongest saints, and his strength was unparalleled. The sword radiances around Ningchen were swallowed by the space and dissipated. Ugh! Suddenly, the space on Ningchen's chest, and blood spurted out like rain. The phoenix fire, demonic flame, and immortal flame burned quickly. Ningchen stabilized his body, and his sword will. The sword will spread, surpassing the limits of space. In front of the space bridge of the great path, a dazzling sword light appeared out of nowhere. It was hundreds of feet long, and in the blink of an eye, it crashed into the bridge of the great path. Cracks appeared on the bridge of the great path under the impact. Just as it was about to collapse, the Zhangqiong saint's figure flashed past and instantly appeared above the bridge of the great path. The sage raised his hand, and the precepts of space spread out, instantly stabilizing the bridge that was about to collapse. The shocking battle attracted the attention of all parties. In the colorful temple, the 3 saints of the great path looked at the sky with different expressions. Under the great Tao, above the firmament. A simple sentence was enough to show the true strength of the firmament saint. The fact that the phoenix could force the Zhangqiong saint to such an extent was beyond imagination. However, that was all they could do. Even the phoenix would not be able to reach the heavens. In the battle, the Zhangqiong saint stabilized the bridge of the great path and looked at the humans in front of him. His expression finally turned serious. At this moment, he finally believed that the young man before him possessed the strength to be on equal footing with him. In fact, he might even lose if he was careless for a moment. The battle started again. At this time, the moonlight in the sky was extremely bright. A light blue figure walked out of the battle and intervened to stop the battle between the two. Let's call it a day, shall we? Fan Lingyue looked at the saint of the great path in front of him and said. Behind them, Ningchen saw this and frowned slightly. The sword light around his body was extremely dazzling. On the bridge of the great path, the Zhangqiong saint looked at the woman in front of him and said calmly, "Sure." As soon as he finished speaking, the Zhangqiong saint withdrew his saint chi and looked at the young man behind the woman. He said, "For countless years, other than the swordsman from 10,000 years ago, You are the most powerful human I have ever seen." Hearing this, Ning Chen's sword intent dissipated. He narrowed his eyes slightly and said, "You have seen him before?" The Zhangqiong saint said faintly, "His sword made me feel fear. Unfortunately, his opponent is the #1 demon god of the heaven realm, the true god of gods." In the colorful temple, the White Lotus Saint, who sensed that the battle had stopped, walked out of the temple and looked at the sky with a frown. They stopped fighting? What are the Zhangqiong Saint and the Phoenix doing? "Master Mo Golden Light, I will go up and take a look." After saying this, the White Lotus Saint's figure flashed and flew toward the sky. Above the sky, the three of them felt the powerful pressure that was rushing towards them, and their expressions turned serious. "It's the White Lotus," the Zhangqiong Saint said faintly and waved his hand to cut off the space. Not long after, a white brilliance appeared in the sky. The White Lotus Saint walked out and looked around with a cold look. "Zhangqiong, are you not going to come out and see me?" The White Lotus Saint said calmly. "Our paths are different." The Zhangqiong Saint's voice sounded in the sky. "We don't work together. Zhangqiong, you should know why the Phoenix is here. Keeping him alive is also a threat to you." The White Lotus Saint said coldly. "Don't worry about it." The Zhangqiong Saint's voice sounded again. The White Lotus Saint snorted and turned to leave without saying anything else. In the sky, 3 figures appeared. The Zhangqiong Saint looked at the woman beside him and said calmly, "Why do you think I will stop this battle?" "Because you are the most indifferent person." Fan Lingyue replied. "You have no desire, so you don't fight. Why does the Great Path have a will?" Ning Chen asked seriously. "I don't know." The Zhangqiong Saint said calmly, "We were born in the chaos and gained intelligence in the primordial era. The era of heaven and earth is our lifespan." Ning Chen heard this and his expression became more serious. He said, "As a great path, you brought disaster to the human world. You are not a saint." "I have never interfered with the affairs of the human world." The Zhangqiong Saint said coldly. "The human world has been destroyed once again." Fan Lingyue looked in the direction of the human world and said calmly, "So, let's come up and kill all the sources of disaster." "In your dreams." The Zhangqiong Saint said indifferently, "The Great Path has 50, and the Heavenly Evolution has 49. Do you know how many saints there are in this world? How many can you kill?" "We still have a lot of time." Ning Chen said calmly, "In these long years of cultivation, we have to do something. What we need to do next is to kill all the saints in the world. Those below the saints are all ants." The Zhangqiong Saint said coldly, "Even if your strength is close to that of a saint, you are still not a saint. My strength is not the strongest among the 49 great paths. Now that you can't even kill me, how can you kill all the saints in the world? If 1 year is not enough, then 2 years. If 2 years is not enough, then 10 years or 100 years, or even 1,000 years. One day, there will be no more saints in this world." Ning Chen looked into the distance and said firmly, "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.